Chapter 529. Not long after Zhao Tailai left, Shin Tua also came after hearing the news. Obviously, he had been paying attention to Lin's movements. This was the embodiment of being valued. Lin could hardly enjoy such treatment in the past. You made it. Shin Tua also knew the reason why Lin had been in closed-door training these days, but he also knew that the treasure cauldron of 9 dragons was a secret and he couldn't ask too much. Lin Sun nodded and didn't hide it. Seeing this, even though Shin Tua had been mentally prepared, he was still shocked. After a long time, he sighed with emotion. It's really a miracle. Yes, who could imagine that Lin Sun succeeded in refining a piece of armor with spiritual tattoos in just a few months without any failure? Luo Feng, a leading guru in the field of spiritual tattoos, had said at the release conference of the Death of the Shattering that Lin Sun could refine the Death of the Shattering purely by luck, and he wouldn't be so lucky in the future. At that time, it caused a dispute. If Luo Feng knew that Lin Sun had once again succeeded in this step today, he would probably feel his cheeks heat up and his old face lose its luster. Shin Tua sighed with emotion for a long time before he came to his senses. This time he came to find Lin not just to express his emotion, but to tell him something serious. It turned out that during the 2 months when Lin was in closed-door training, many practitioners came one after another and sent him a lot of news about the antidote of Devil Calamity powder. Unfortunately, after Shin Tua identified them one by one, almost all the news couldn't be taken as true, and the only reliable news seemed too unrealistic. It was said that the only way to remove the Devil Calamity powder was to go to the depths of the Empire of the Dark, because the Devil Calamity powder came from there. This was an extremely correct nonsense. Although Lin knew that the news was definitely not false, in today's world, the Empire and the Empire of the Dark were like mortal enemies. Let alone going deep into the Empire of the Dark, one would be killed as soon as he approached. Hearing all this, Lin couldn't help but be stunned. Only then did he realize that it was much more difficult to remove the Devil Calamity powder than he had imagined. Is there no other way? Lin couldn't help asking. Unexpectedly, Shin Tua said, Yes, I heard that deep in the Soul Oblivion Ocean, there is a spiritual medicine called the Flower of the Refinement Path. It can expel all kinds of poisons in the world. However, it is just a rumor. No one can verify its authenticity. After a pause, he continued, Moreover, the Soul Oblivion Sea is extremely dangerous. It is comparable to the depths of the Empire of the Dark. There are many natural disasters and horrible sea demons. Even reincarnation development realm cultivators do not dare to go there easily. Knowing this, Lin Sun felt helpless. He realized that it was impossible to help Vulture get rid of the poison of Devil Calamity in a short time. However, in his heart, he did remember the name Refinement Path Ocean Soul Flower. By the way, a secret letter was delivered a few days ago, saying that it was sent by an old friend and that you must read it in person. As he spoke, Shin Tua took out a jade letter that was completely sealed. An old friend? Lin Sun was in a daze. He took the letter, opened the seal, and took out a piece of paper. At the first glance of the contents of the letter, Lin Sun narrowed his eyes, and a touch of gloomy coldness suddenly filled his eyebrows. It read, The lives of all the people in Feiyun Village are in my hands. If you don't want them to die, I will wait for you in Donglin Town 3 days later. Remember, you come alone. If I find that you have a helper, you will never see those people in Feiyun Village again. Signed, Lian Fei. Lian Fei. How could Lin Sun forget an old friend? Lian Fei's father, Lian Ruffring, used to be the guard commander of Feiyun Village. He was so greedy that he wanted to encroach on all the property of Feiyun Village, which aroused public anger and was later killed by Lin Sun. Until Lin Sun entered Donglin Village, Lian Fei carried out many assassinations against Lin Sun with the help of Yao Susu and Yao Tuahai. How could Lin Sun forget such an old friend? But Lin Sun never expected that after a few years, when he got the news of Lian Fei again, It would be such a thing. He even threatened the lives of all the villagers in Feiyun village to force Lin Sun to meet him alone. There was no doubt that this must be a trap. Moreover, Lin Sun was even sure that Lian Fei dared not do this with his courage. He must have Yao Tuahai behind him. However, Lin Sun still didn't understand why Yao Tuahai, a great practitioner of Tao Insight realm in the southwestern province of the empire, dared to oppose him at this time. Didn't he know that with the power Lin Sun had now, he could easily destroy him and the force behind him? Lin Sun's face was shrouded with a layer of haze. He couldn't figure it out. Speaking of hatred, there was indeed great hatred between him, Lian Fei and Yao Tuahai. But they suddenly attacked the villagers of Feiyun village at this time to threaten him. What did they want? It was definitely not as simple as revenge. According to Yao Tuahai's shrewdness and means, he must have known what serious revenge he would get if he fell out with Lin Sun at this time. But he dared to do this. There must be a conspiracy behind it. Is it possible that Lian Fei did this because of the secret support of the three top forces of Qi, Zhua and Qin? Lin Sun couldn't calm down. Feiyun village. It was like Lin Sun's first home in the empire. The villagers there also regarded him as one of their own, just like a family member. But now, the lives of all the villagers in Feiyun village were threatened by Lin Sun. How could Lin Sun stay calm? Lian Fei. Yao Tuahai. It seems that it's time to put an end to the previous grievances. After a long time, Lin Sun took a deep breath with a strong killing intent flashing in his black eyes. Lin Sun, what's wrong? Shun Tua asked beside him. He was keenly aware that Lin Sun's expression was a little strange. Nothing. Lin Sun put away the letter calmly and said, Senior, I may leave for a period of time. During this period, I hope you can keep it a secret from me and don't let others know that I've left. He did intend to act alone because he didn't dare to take risk. If he used other forces, the villagers of Feiyun village would be absolutely in danger if Lian Fei was alerted. Seeing Lin Sun's serious look, Shin Tua also realized that Lin Sun might have encountered some tricky things and didn't want others to intervene. He immediately nodded and said, Well, leave it to me. But if you really encounter trouble that you can't solve, be sure to tell me. Lin Sun smiled and nodded. On the same day, Lin Sun quietly left Green Deer School with Xia Ji and returned to Heart Cleansing Peak. After briefly telling Lin Zhong and Vulture what had happened, Lin Sun resolutely chose to leave alone. No one could dissuade him, including Vulture and Lin Zhong. They could only make preparations in secret. Once they found something wrong with Lin Sun, they would take action immediately. Xia Ji was also left in Heart Cleansing Peak. She had just experienced a transformation of quietus, which meant that she had to start her cultivation again. It was not suitable for her to act with Lin Sun. In the evening, Lin Sun left the Forbidden City alone. It was also the first time for him to leave the Forbidden City since he entered it a year ago. Almost no one knew that Lin Sun, a young grandmaster of spiritual tattoos who was famous in the Forbidden City, suddenly chose to leave alone today. But Lin Sun himself knew that there must be someone paying attention to all the forces related to him in the dark of the Forbidden City. Whether it was Heart Cleansing Peak, Green Deer School, Keystone Business, Ning family or Yi family, once there was any change, it would be noticed by the enemies in the dark and then pass to the ears of Lian Fei and others in Donglin Town. Although Lin Sun didn't know who these hidden enemies were, he didn't dare to take risks. He didn't disturb anyone, so he didn't worry that Lian Fei and others dared to go back on their words. 2 days later. Donglin Town, southwest border of the empire. At noon, a spiritual shuttle set off from Mist City, the capital of Southwest Province, crushed the clouds and slowly landed outside Donglin City with a harsh roar. A plain-looking teenager in moon-white clothes came out of the spiritual shuttle. This person, of course, was Lin Sun in disguise. After nearly 3 years of absence, Lin Sun returned to Donglin village again, which made him feel a little emotional and complicated. The first city he went to after leaving Feiyun village was Donglin town in front of him. Here, Lin soon lived in the murky civilian area, founded Golden Hall, and got to know Gu Yanping and Gu Liang. Here, he and the clan of Wu, Lian Fei, the Black Tiger Gang, and other enemy forces had engaged in one bloody battle after another. It was also here that he suffered unfair treatment in the annual county test. He was deliberately targeted and suppressed by Yao Tuahai. If it hadn't been for the mysterious Queen of Dark Night, he and Xia Ji would have almost died in Yao Tuahai's hands. At that time, Lin Sun was just a teenager in martial realm, alone and with only Xia Ji by his side. Now, Lin Sun came to Donglin town again. The enemies of that year were still there, but he had become completely different from before. The grievances of Donglin town must be settled. Lin Sun stood there and thought silently for a long time. Finally, he no longer hesitated and walked into Donglin town. Donglin Restaurant. This was the largest restaurant in Donglin town, and its business had always been very good. The restaurant specialized in providing some exotic game from the 3,000 mountains, which was highly sought after by practitioners. At noon, Donglin Restaurant was still as lively as before. Many practitioners gathered, drinking and talking about the hottest things in the town. At the window on the second floor of the restaurant, Lin soon ordered some dishes and wine, and then he drank alone. Lian Fei's letter asked him to meet in Donglin town 3 days later, but didn't tell Lin Sun where to meet. Naturally, Lin Sun couldn't be led by the nose. He arrived 1 day in advance to make some necessary preparations and responses. Chapter 530. It was very lively in the restaurant. Many practitioners were discussing the recent hot topic. If we talk about the most popular man in the empire today, it must be Lin Sun, who came from our Donglin town. Someone suddenly spoke out, which immediately aroused many echoes. Yes, who can imagine that the young man had such a dazzling achievement only 3 years after he left? It can be said that no one can compare with him. The Forbidden City is a place of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. It's a miracle that Lin Sun can stand out and lead the way. Now, he has won the first place in the province test of Southwest Province. Although he has not participated in the nation test, he has become a teacher of Green Deer School. The most interesting thing is that he is the heir of Lin family in the Forbidden City and owns Heart Cleansing Peak, one of the 72 peaks of the Forbidden City. Now he is a young grandmaster of spiritual tattoos. Someone was recounting all the glorious deeds Lin Sun had done, which caused another round of exclamation. Lin Sun's expression was slightly strange. It was the first time for him to listen to others talk about himself so closely as a bystander. You only know that Lin Sun is now famous all over the world. But do you know that in the county test of Donglin town, Lin Sun was jointly suppressed by Yao Tuahai, a great practitioner, and Yu Tsonglin, the dean of Donglin School? Lin Sun almost died. An old man said mysteriously, which immediately aroused many people's attention and questions. Why did Yu Tsonglin fight against Lin Sun? It's too outrageous. You don't know this. It was the patriarch of Clan of Wu who found Yu Tsonglin and deliberately wanted to deal with Lin Sun. You also know that Lin Sun was persecuted many times by Clan of Wu when he was in Donglin town. I see. Many people suddenly understood, and some people couldn't help gloating. Clan of Wu and Yu Tsonglin probably never dreamed that the young man they persecuted had become the most dazzling star of the empire. If Lin Sun returned to Donglin town in the future, what would Clan of Wu do? Hearing this, Lin Sun finally solved a mystery in his heart. It turned out that in the county test, Yu Tsonglin, the dean of Donglin School, deliberately targeted and suppressed him for the sake of Clan of Wu. Suddenly, a sharp voice rang out and it seemed out of place. Hey, no matter how great Lin Sun is, his glory will eventually come to an end. According to what I know, he will be in big trouble in a few days. It was a young man with a powdered face and oily hair. He wore a luxurious golden robe and sat there in a carefree manner. He had a frivolous look on his face. As soon as these words came out, the entire crowd was in an uproar. Everyone was in disbelief. "Brother, may I ask if this news is true?" someone could not help but ask. The golden-robed youth had an unfathomable look on his face as he slowly said, "You will know the result in a few days." Many people looked down on him, not believing him at all. They thought that the golden-robed young man was jealous of Lin Sun and deliberately stirred up trouble. There was also a small group of people who were skeptical and continued to ask. However, the golden-robed young man seemed to have some misgivings and didn't dare to say anything else. He answered vaguely, and not long after, he stood up to pay the bill and left in a hurry. Donglin town was bustling as usual. After the golden-robed young man left the restaurant, he felt a pain at the back of his head when he walked through an alley. He rolled his eyes and passed out immediately. In a dark room, when the golden-robed young man woke up again, he found himself tied up there, and a young man was looking at him quietly on the opposite side. "Who are you? How dare you play the trick of sneak attack with a stick? Do you want to die?" The golden-robed young man shouted angrily. "I ask and you answer. If your answer satisfies me, I will let you go immediately. If you don't cooperate, don't blame me for being rude." The young man was naturally Lin Sun. When he was in the restaurant, he had noticed what the golden-robed young man said. Others might think that he was being alarmist, but Lin Sun would not. "Little bastard, how dare you extort a confession by torture? Do you know who I am? Are you tired of living? Let me tell you." Crack! Before he finished speaking, the shoulder blades of his arms were dislocated, which made him scream in pain. His forehead was sweating and his cheeks were distorted. "I don't have the patience to waste time with you. You only have one chance, and it depends on whether you can grasp it or not," Lin Sun said with a smile. His smile was calm, warm, and harmless, but it made the golden-robed young man excited and indescribable fear arose in his heart. Clan of Wu. Lin Sun stood in the distance, looking at the mansion of Clan of Wu. According to the golden-robed young man, he also heard from a drunken disciple of Clan of Wu that it wouldn't take long for Lin Sun to die without a burial place, and he promised with certainty that there would be a clear result in a short time. Wu family. Thinking of Wu family, Lin Sun remembered Wu Henshui and Wu Jie, who died in his hands, and how he was frequently chased by Wu family after he entered Donglin town. Whoosh! Before long, Lin Sun came to a secluded place. With a flash of his figure, he used ice drake steps and easily entered Wu family's mansion like a wisp of smoke from nothingness. Clatter! Lin Sun spread out his powerful divine soul power and carefully sneaked through the rows of mansions. Donglin town was a small city on the southwest border of the empire. Although Wu family was the overlord of the city, it was not worth mentioning for Lin Sun now, and its defense was useless. Not to mention Wu family, there was not a single Tao Insight Realm cultivator in the whole Donglin town. And as far as Lin Sun knew, the strongest cultivator in Clan of Wu was definitely no more than Sea Spirit Realm. Under such circumstances, Lin Sun naturally didn't worry about encountering any fatal crisis. The only thing he had to watch out for might be Yao Tuahai, a great practitioner. But Lin Sun didn't believe that a big shot like Yao Tuahai would stay in Wu family. Before long, he suddenly stopped, and then his figure flashed and hid in the shadow of an eave. Almost at the same time, in a palace diagonally opposite to where Lin Sun was hiding, many big shots of Wu family were talking. The palace was magnificent. Wu Chaochuan, first elder Wu Yunshan, second elder Wu Yushan, and third elder Wu Lanshan of Wu family were all present. Although this action is extremely dangerous, as long as we can completely eradicate Lin Sun, our Wu family will be at ease in the future, and we don't have to worry about that little bastard coming back to take revenge on us. Wu Chaochuan said in a cold voice. That's the best. To be honest, Even I didn't expect that little bastard could make such a dazzling achievement now. I only regret that I didn't kill him with all my strength, so that he grew up. It's a pity." First Elder Wu Yunshan sighed. Others also felt sad. Since they learned that Lin Sun was rising strongly in the Forbidden City, they couldn't eat or sleep, and every day felt like a year. They were afraid that Lin Sun would remember the hatred of the past and come back to take revenge. After all, the hatred between Wu family and Lin Sun was so deep that it couldn't be reconciled. Under such circumstances, no one knew when Lin Sun would come back on a whim. If they could take advantage of this opportunity to eradicate Lin Sun, they would naturally be very happy. That's it. With Senior Yao Tuahai personally commanding this action, we must be sure to succeed. We don't have to worry too much about Lin Sun's revenge after the matter is exposed. Wu Chaochuan ordered in a low voice. At this moment, suddenly, 4 divine rainbows appeared in the hall, like falling from the sky, and blocked the whole hall. 4 symbols coiling dragon pillars. Of course, it was Lin Sun. Boom. Before Wu Chaochuan and others could react, they felt dizzy and appeared in a dreamland. It was white all around, and they could only see 4 towering ancient stone pillars standing at the 4 poles. Oh no! Their faces suddenly changed, and they frantically tried to find a way out. But no matter how they moved, they couldn't get out of the blockade of the 4 stone pillars. This made their faces more and more gloomy, and they faintly felt that a disaster was coming. At this moment, Lin Sun's figure appeared in the dreamland. He glanced at Wu Chaochuan and others, and said indifferently, "Tell me where Lian Fei is, and I can let you die quickly." "Who are you?" Wu Chaochuan took a deep breath and asked in a low voice. "You even forgot me?" Lin Sun smiled and revealed his real face. "It's you, Lin Sun?" All of a sudden, Wu Chaochuan and others were stunned. They didn't expect that Lin Sun would appear in their Wu family. How did he find out about this? After all, since they decided to cooperate with Lian Fei, they had never leaked any information. Naturally, they couldn't imagine how Lin Sun came to them one day in advance. "Ha ha, all the villagers in your Feiyun village are in the hands of young Master Lian Fei. Do you dare to act violently at this time?" Wu Chaochuan laughed. "Really?" Bang! Lin Sun waved his sleeves, and a terrible strong wind swept across and smashed Wu Yunshan's head in an instant. Blood burst out, which was extremely miserable. "How dare you? Lin Sun, do you really care about the lives of the villagers in Feiyun village? Let me tell you, even if you kill us, Senior Yao Tuahai will never let you go." Wu Chaochuan and others roared in shock and anger. They had never thought that Lin Sun would kill them without a word. The most terrible thing was that even Wu Yunshan couldn't withstand a blow from Lin Sun, which made them realize with horror that Lin Sun had indeed become completely different after 3 years. He was no longer the young man in the true martial realm who could only be hunted down by them. Instead, he was a famous young prodigy of the empire, possessing a cultivation level that far surpassed their own Spirit C-tier cultivation level. His power was boundless. "I'm not here to talk nonsense with you. Answer my question, or I'll send you on your way to find Lian Fei to settle the score," Lin Sun said indifferently. Although he was alone, the horrible breath exuded from him almost suffocated Wu Chaochuan and others, making their blood run cold and their souls fly out of their bodies. They really couldn't resist him. He was too strong. These old guys were only in gang spirit realm. In Lin Sun's eyes, they were simply vulnerable. "What do you want to know?" Wu Chaochuan took a deep breath and asked with a livid face. At this moment, when they really faced Lin Sun, they knew what fear and despair was. The death of the first elder Wu Yunshan was the best proof. Chapter 531. Lin Sun asked concisely, "Where is Lian Fei?" Wu Chaochuan's face was livid with fear. Although he felt extremely humiliated, he dared not refuse to answer. "He will show up tomorrow. Before that, no one knows where he is." Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. "How do you contact him?" Wu Chaochuan shook his head. He will contact us when he needs us. Lin Sun frowned slightly and said, "To be honest, in my eyes, you are just a group of chickens and dogs. I believe that as long as Lien Fei is not stupid, he will not think that you can defeat me with your strength. But why does he choose to cooperate with you?" Lin Sun's words were so harsh that they made Wu Chaochuan feel extremely aggrieved. But the reality was cruel. Even if they didn't want to, they had to admit that they were really no match for Lin Sun. Even if the whole clan of Wu joined hands, they would not be able to defeat Lin Sun. This was the horror of Sea Spirit Realm. Perhaps it was nothing in the Forbidden City, but in this small town on the southwest border of the Empire, it was already a terrible big shot standing in the clouds. "Because he knows that we have a grudge against you," Wu Chaochuan answered with a gloomy face. In fact, he also had a trace of doubt in his heart. Lien Fei was the son-in-law of Yao Tuai. If he wanted to deal with Lin Sun, it would be wisest to choose a stronger force to cooperate with. But Lien Fei came to the Wu family. Perhaps Lien Fei really took a fancy to the grudge between the Wu family and Lin Sun? Wu Chaochuan himself couldn't be sure. Lin Sun realized that the clan of Wu might be used as a chess piece by Lien Fei. What was ridiculous was that Wu Chaochuan and the others pretended to be ignorant of it. "Do you know where Lien Fei has imprisoned the villagers of Feiyun?" Lin Sun asked the question he was most concerned about. Wu Chaochuan still shook his head, indicating that he didn't know. "Really?" A trace of killing intent flashed in Lin Sun's black eyes. "Really?" Wu Chaochuan braced himself to answer. Bang! Squinting his eyes, Lin Sun suddenly raised his hand and smashed the head of second elder Wu Yushan with a slap. Blood flowed out like a smashed watermelon, which scared Wu Chaochuan and third elder Wu Lanshan. They screamed in horror and anger. In their eyes, Lin Sun was simply like a demon that killed without any hesitation. He was resolute and ruthless to the point of being terrifying. "I'll ask you one last time. If you still can't satisfy me, then the entire Wu clan will be buried with you." Lin Sun's words were light and breezy, but when Wu Chaochuan heard it, it was no less than a bolt from the blue, which made him completely collapse. I'll talk, okay? It's under the forbidden grounds of the Wu family's backyard." The 4 symbols coiling dragon pillars were put away, and corpses that were still dripping with blood appeared on the ground. Not a single person was left alive. Including Wu Chaochuan and Wu Lanshan, they were also killed by Lin Sun at the last moment. It was not that he was cruel and merciless, but that he had to retaliate and deter such hatred. Whoosh! Without any hesitation, Lin Sun's figure flashed a few times and appeared in a forbidden area of the backyard of the clan of Wu. After a short search, he found an underground entrance covered with a spiritual formation. Naturally, this level of spiritual formation was not a problem for Lin Sun at all. Without cracking it, he easily entered it. At this time, Lin Sun disguised himself as Wu Chaochuan vividly. Even his behavior and expression were the same as Wu Chaochuan's. This was a disguising skill that every trainee in the bloodthirsty camp had to master, and Lin Sun was naturally proficient in it. This was a tunnel leading to the underground, paved with stone steps, and hanging on the walls on both sides of the tunnel were lamps, emitting a soft luster. Lin Sun spread out his spiritual power and found no danger, so he believed Wu Chaochuan's words. This was indeed not a trap, but a secret chamber that originally belonged to the Wu family to store treasures. But now it had been vacated. At the end of the tunnel, there was an underground palace, bright and spacious. According to Wu Chaochuan, the villagers of Feiyun village were imprisoned here. The one guarding these villagers was a squire of Lien Fei, who didn't allow others to approach easily. "Who is it?" As soon as Lin Sun arrived, someone shouted in a low voice. "It's me." Lin Sun strolled into the underground palace with a straight face. Then he narrowed his eyes and saw the appearance of the person who asked him just now. The man, with black hair and beard and a dignified look, was Yu Songlin, the dean of Donglin School. This person was known for being old-fashioned, serious. As early as many years ago, he was one of the most famous overmatches in Sea Spirit Realm in Donglin Town. In the county test 3 years ago, although Yu Songlin didn't show anything, Lin Sun already knew that besides the chief examiner Yao Tuahai, there was also Yu Songlin who oppressed and dealt with him. But Lin Sun didn't expect that Yu Songlin, the dean of Donglin School and a famous big shot in Donglin Town, would appear in the underground palace of Wu family. This made Lin Sun feel that something was wrong. When he extorted a confession from Wu Chaochuan, he didn't hear that Yu Songlin was also here. It seems that the old guy wanted to set me up before he died, and tried to use Yu Songlin to deal with me. Lin Sun figured out the reason in an instant. Fellow practitioner Wu, why are you here? Yu Songlin asked in surprise. Lin Sun felt relaxed at once, knowing that Yu Songlin didn't see through his disguise. He said in a hoarse voice, I'm here to have a look. Although I'm going to kill that guy tomorrow, I still feel a little uneasy. Yu Songlin nodded and comforted him. This action is planned by His Excellency Yao Tuahai. Lin Sun can't save the situation. Don't worry too much. Lin Sun nodded and glanced around the palace, only to find that it was empty except for some tables and chairs. Where are they? Lin Sun frowned, but he had a bad feeling in his heart. Either Wu Chaochuan was lying, or something had happened here. Patriarch Wu, what can I do for you? Suddenly, a well-dressed young man walked out from the side door of the palace and said with a frown, Didn't I tell you not to let me get close to here? Wu Chaochuan, who was disguised by Lin Sun, smiled embarrassedly. I'm just too nervous and worried about gains and losses. Don't worry. I'll guard that bumpkin. There will be no accident. Go now. The well-dressed young man looked disdainful, seeming to despise Wu Chaochuan's timidity. Can I go and have a look? The fake Wu Chaochuan hesitated. We'll start the business tomorrow. I'm afraid that something unexpected will happen. Hearing this, the well-dressed young man showed a strange expression. He stared at Lin Sun for a moment and suddenly laughed. Lin Sun, don't pretend. My Excellency has already expected you to come. What did you say? Yu Songlin was surprised. He opened his eyes wide and pointed at Lin Sun. You mean he is Lin Sun? The well-dressed young man smiled and said, Yes, Wu Chaochuan once swore that he would never step in here before tomorrow. I believe he would never dare to violate the oath. Yu Songlin's face suddenly became cold, and he glanced at Lin Sun like lightning. Now that you know I'm here, you're still so calm. You must have something to rely on, right? Lin Sun raised his hand to remove the disguise and showed his real face. He felt a little heavy in his heart, realizing that there was something wrong with this action. It's really you. Yu Songlin's pupils shrank with an unbelievable look. Obviously, he was also kept in the dark before. Yes, according to my Excellency's deduction, you will definitely not be arrested without putting up a fight. He guessed that you would definitely take some actions, so he specially arranged me to wait for you here. Sure enough, as my Excellency expected, you did come. The well-dressed young man looked very confident and spoke with fervor and assurance. Lin Sun calmed down at this moment. What if I don't come today? The well-dressed young man smiled and said, Then we'll send someone to invite you here tomorrow. Obviously, they had been planning for a long time. The plan was very thorough and all kinds of accidents had been taken into account. It seems that the cooperation between you and Wu family is obviously just a cover. You deliberately want to attract my attention, right? Lin Sun looked calmer and calmer. You're too polite. Strictly speaking, Wu family is just cannon fodder. I believe they have all been killed by you now, right? How about it? Does the feeling of revenge make you feel better? The well-dressed young man asked with a smile. Lin Sun also smiled. As you said, they are just cannon fodder. If I want to vent my inner hatred, killing them is far from enough. Yao Qing, Wu family is cannon fodder. What am I? Yu Songlin, who had been silent all the time, suddenly opened his mouth in a low voice, with an undisguised anger on his face. He never thought that he was also cheated. "Senior, please calm down. You are a good friend of my excellency. Wu family can't compare with you. You have to escort Lin Sun to Green Maple County in person for this action." The well-dressed young man called Yao Qing said apologetically. "Humph." Yu Songlin snorted coldly and said nothing. Although he was angry in his heart, he also knew that the urgent task was to deal with Lin Sun, so he could only bear it and accept it. Green Maple County? Lin Sun frowned. "Haha, you don't really think that we will deal with you in Donglin Town, do you?" Yao Qing laughed with endless sarcasm and complacency. Immediately, he said with emotion, "We can't do anything about it. You're too famous now. The whole empire knows your name, and there are many big forces who are on good terms with you. If someone secretly helps you, there will be too many variables after all. Instead of that, we'd better make a feint. On the surface, we will lead you to Donglin Town. Secretly, we will let you follow us to Green Maple County without being noticed. At that time, we won't have to worry about any accidents." After saying that, Yao Qing looked at Lin Sun with a smile, as if he was looking at a prey falling into a trap. "What a good trick to cross the sea. Yao Tuahai really thinks highly of me." After knowing all this, Lin Sun had to admire Yao Tuahai for being so astute that all the arrangements were almost flawless. "But, are you so confident that I will wait for death?" Lin Sun was puzzled. Chapter 532. Yao Qing laughed again and said, "Of course. My master said that as long as you dare to show up here alone, it means that the villagers of Feiyun village are extremely important to you. Otherwise, you wouldn't dare to take the risk alone." After a pause, he continued, "So, as long as you still care about the lives of those villagers, you have to follow me obediently." There was a sense of complacency in his voice, which was a sense of superiority. Then, Yao Qing turned around and walked into the side door of the palace. When he reappeared, he was carrying a comatose, middle-aged man. The middle-aged man had dark skin, a rough look, and thick bones. Wearing an old animal skin coat, he was obviously a villager who often worked hard in the fields, for there were traces of wind and sun on his body. "Uncle Taizhan." Lin Sun finally couldn't keep calm, and his heart suddenly tightened. The comatose, middle-aged man was Taizhan. When Lin Sun entered Feiyun village for the first time, he was the first villager he met. He still remembered Taizhan sitting in the spiritual field and sighing with a sad face. He also remembered Tieshan's excited and joyful expression when Lin Sun helped him get rid of the pests in the spiritual field. Taizhan was an honest, warm and simple middle-aged man. Without his introduction, Lin Sun couldn't integrate into Feiyun village in the first place. But now, Taizhan was imprisoned in a coma, and no one knew whether he was dead or alive. Keenly aware of the change of Lin Sun's mood, Yao Qing couldn't help but let out a satisfied laugh. He said leisurely, "Look, this is one of the villagers you care about most. I believe you should be sure that we didn't deceive you. The other villagers are now settled in Green Maple Prefecture. Under such circumstances, it's hard for me to imagine that you have any other choice but to follow me." At this moment, even Yu Songlin next to him was stunned. He didn't expect that Yao Tuahai's arrangement and strategy could be so thorough. It was like an inescapable net, leaving no room for Lin Sun to struggle. It could be seen how many arrangements and schemes he had made to deal with Lin Sun. His shrewdness and means were really terrible. Lin Sun was silent. Since the first time he saw Taizhan, he knew that the worst thing finally happened. It wasn't a big surprise, but there was an indescribable hatred fermenting in his heart, like a volcano that was about to erupt. He was about to lose control. In the depth of his black eyes, there was a pair of unfathomable abysses, as if there was a storm accumulating in them, which was frightening and chilling. What? How could he be? Yu Songlin was shocked. 3 years ago, in his eyes, Lin Sun was even less than grass, and could not withstand a single blow. But now Lin Sun's breath alone made him feel an unprecedented fear and tremble. You? Yao, how? You? Do you know that if you kill me, the villagers will also pay the price in blood? Yao Qing screamed, trying to calm herself down. Kacha, Lin Sun ignored him. His right hand grasped Yao Qing's neck firmly, and his left hand, like a pair of iron pincers, crushed Yao Qing's shoulder blades and arms inch by inch. Yao Qing's flesh and blood burst out inch by inch, turning into a thick rain of blood and falling down. Yao Qing let out a blood-curdling scream and struggled madly, but he couldn't break free at all, let alone make Lin Sun stop. From beginning to end, Lin Sun's expression remained unchanged. The method he used at this time had a resounding name in the bloodthirsty camp: Scarlet Waterfall. It was a kind of torture. He crushed the enemy's body inch by inch with a precise force. The blood rain poured down like a waterfall, and the scene was scarlet and poignant. During this process, the victim had to remain clear-headed and experience the pain of every inch of their body being crushed, thus producing a kind of visual, auditory, and spiritual shock. If the enemy died before the torture ended, it meant that he didn't master the essence of Scarlet Waterfall, which would be laughed at by the drill masters of the bloodthirsty camp if it was spread out. Of course, this kind of torture was generally used on the dark alien tribes, but now Lin Sun used it on Yao Qing. Lin Sun's mastery of Scarlet Waterfall was naturally superb. At that time, under the personal guidance of young Ku and young Man, Lin Sun had to bear the pungent smell of blood and kill numerous beasts to master the essence of this kind of torture. If the drill masters of the bloodthirsty camp saw this scene, they would definitely be amazed by Lin Sun's marvelous means. It was just like art. However, it was a bloody and cruel art, so it had a particularly shocking impact. If ordinary people saw it, they would have been scared out of their wits and vomited and fainted. Within the spacious underground palace, flesh and blood flowed down like a torrential downpour, scarlet red and boiling hot, and it was accompanied by extremely miserable, painful, and tragic screams. Under Lin Sun's control, it was impossible to faint, let alone die. In the distance, Yu Songlin was dumbfounded. His chest rose and fell rapidly, as if he saw an executioner from the hell performing blood and brutality with extremely cruel means. His face turned pale, cold sweat poured down like rain, and his whole body trembled. He was so scared that he almost vomited. As an elder in Sea Spirit Realm who had experienced many hardships, Yu Songlin was experienced and knowledgeable. But when he saw such a bloody picture at this time, he felt for the first time what was worse than death. What scared him most was that Lin Sun looked calm and indifferent from the beginning to the end, as if he was an outsider. It was also at this time that Yu Songlin suddenly realized one thing. Unconsciously, he didn't even have the thought of rescuing Yao Qing. He even didn't dare to look at Lin Sun face to face. In the end, Yao Qing was not killed, but he was absolutely no different from being dead. His limbs were all gone, like a human stick whose branches had been cut off. Except for the remaining consciousness, he was no different from a disabled person. At this time, Lin Sun said, "Sorry, I can't control my killing intent any longer. I need to vent it." Yao Qing's eyes were devoid of spirit. His lips had already been bitten, and his face was pale and transparent. His eyebrows were full of gloominess and helplessness. You will die a horrible death." Yao Qing's lips trembled, and his breath was very weak. His voice seemed to be squeezed out of his chest, extremely weak and resentful. "In fact, you are also a poor man. Since Yao Tuahai sent you here, it proves that you are cannon fodder like the clan of Wu. It doesn't matter whether you are dead or alive." Lin Sun said slowly, "Just like if I kill you now, do you think Yao Tuahai will kill all the villagers in Feiyun village for you? It's impossible. He needs to threaten me with those villagers. He would never dare to do so before seeing me. Yao Qing's lips trembled, seeming to be very excited. He stared at Lin Sun with resentment and disbelief. It doesn't matter if you don't admit it. Sometimes the truth is so cruel. If you pretend you know nothing, maybe you will feel better when you die. Lin Sun's voice was light and calm, as if he was chatting with an old friend. But it made Yu Tsonglin's scalp numb and his hands and feet cold, as if he had fallen into an ice cave. That youth was clearly handsome and warm, and he seemed to be harmless to both man and beast. But who could have imagined that a cold and cruel devil was hidden beneath his skin? You will die too, and die more miserably than me. Yao Qing screamed with a strange flush on his face, which no one knew where he got the strength from. But as soon as his voice died away, he lay there with his face covered with a layer of blue and gray, as if he had lost his vitality. Really? Lin Sun smiled and gently covered Yao Qing's eyelids, saying, I'm sorry. You are just an errand boy. I shouldn't have tortured you just now. Have a good sleep and try not to be cannon fodder in your next life. Yao Qing's eyes almost popped out, and he breathed his last. At this time, Lin Sun stood up slowly and looked at Yu Tsonglin in the distance. Almost at the same time, Yu Tsonglin trembled all over and said with a gloomy face, Don't you worry that Yao Tuahai will kill some villagers to frighten you if he really gets angry? Lin Sun asked in reply, Do you think Yao Tuahai will let me live if I go to Green Maple County this time? Yu Tsonglin immediately fell into silence. Lin Sun continued, Then let me ask you again. If I die, will Yao Tuahai let those villagers go? Yu Tsonglin fell into silence again. Of course it was impossible. At that time, Yao Tuahai would kill those villagers in order to cover up the secret of killing Lin Sun. In this case, it's useless for me to worry more. Lin Sun looked calm without any emotional fluctuation. But the more he behaved like this, the more Yu Tsonglin felt terrified. How are you going to deal with me? Yu Tsonglin's voice was hard and low. He knew that he had to face this problem at this moment. You can be spared from death, but you can't escape punishment. After a while, Lin Sun bent down and carried the unconscious Taizhan on his back. Then he turned around and left the underground palace. From the beginning to the end, Lin Sun didn't pay any more attention to the disabled Yu Tsonglin. He was so old that he even lost the courage to resist and couldn't make any waves anymore. Donglin town was still bustling with traffic. No one knew that all the leaders of Wu family had died suddenly, nor did anyone know that Yu Tsonglin, the famous dean of Donglin School, had become a disabled man today. Outside Donglin town, the earliest spiritual shuttle to Green Maple County had already set off. However, an old and common treasure ship had been waiting there. When Lin Sun arrived with Taizhan on his back, the treasure ship immediately soared into the sky with two people. Chapter 533. The treasure ship looked shabby and ordinary, but its interior was elegantly and luxuriously decorated. The most amazing thing was that there were 16 latest spiritual cannons on both sides of the treasure ship. It was definitely not as simple as an ordinary treasure ship. Inside the cabin, Mu Wansu looked at the young man in front of her with some emotion. Her full red lips parted slightly, revealing a mouthful of sparkling teeth. Even with your current status in the empire, such a thing still happened to you. Lin Sun was also looking at the old friend opposite him. Mu Wansu was undoubtedly an extremely beautiful woman. Mature, charming, with exquisite makeup, she was like a plump honey peach, full of charm. As before, she wore a well-tailored black dress, which outlined her graceful and slender figure vividly and set off her white skin, which was as white as suet with an attractive flavor. When they met for the first time, Lin Sun was still a teenager living in Feiyun village, and Mu Wansu was the person in charge of keystone business in Donglin town. 3 years later, Lin Sun's situation and identity had undergone earth-shaking changes, attracting worldwide attention. Mu Wansu had already left Donglin town and became the person in charge of keystone business in southwest province of the empire. Sister Wansu is more beautiful than before. Lin Sun also sighed with emotion. There was a kind of wisdom, competence, and elegance in Mu Wansu, like a rose blooming in the wind and rain, becoming more and more delicate and charming. Mu Wansu was stunned and spat lightly. She rolled her eyes and rebuked, "You little bastard, still have a glib tongue at such a critical moment. You are asking for a beating." Lying lazily on the back of the chair with his hands behind his head, Lin Sun said with a smile, "Calm down when there is a big event. Even if I appear to be very serious, it doesn't help now." Mu Wansu's expression softened and she said, "Don't worry too much. Green Maple County has already started to take action if there is no accident." After a pause, she suddenly sneered, "Yao Tuahai is really crazy. Does he really think that he can do whatever he wants just because of the Yao family? Perhaps in the southwest province, he can summon wind and rain, but in the eyes of the real big forces, he is just an old dog. If you want to deal with him, the power of Keystone business alone is enough to destroy him." Lin Sun said, "Do you think Yao Tuahai is playing with fire? Isn't that the case?" Mu Wansu asked. Lin Sun's dark eyes were deep and his voice was low. "I've been thinking about the reason why Yao Tuahai chose to go against me at this time. It's obviously a stupid decision. Anyone with a discerning eye knows that even the whole Yao family can't shake me, let alone Yao Tuahai. But he did it. What do you think he is after?" Mu Wansu thought about it and said, "Do you think that there are other forces supporting Yao Tuahai in the dark?" Lin Sun said, "This is also a possibility." Mu Wansu's expression turned solemn. "In that case, do we need to prepare more forces?" Lin Sun shook his head, "No need. Apart from Keystone business, Ning family, Yi family, Tumbler family and Gong family are also secretly cooperating with each other in order to prevent more variables." Mu Wansu's eyes lit up. Only then did she realize that Lin Sun had already made various preparations for this. Immediately, she couldn't help sighing with emotion in her heart. It was only 3 years later that Lin Sun had become so powerful, which was completely unimaginable to her before. "Sister Wansu, why do you always stare at me? Is there a flower on my face?" Lin Sun teased with a smile. Mu Wansu snorted and stared at Lin Sun with her beautiful and charming big eyes. "Tell me the truth. How many backup measures have you prepared this time?" Lin Sun said casually, "Not much, but it should be enough." This time, Lin Sun did leave the Forbidden City alone without disturbing any forces. But it didn't mean that Lin Sun would take risks alone like a fool. Instead of using the power, he wanted to go to the Dragon's Pool and Tiger's Den alone. It was not bold, but stupid. Lin Sun had worked hard to cultivate to this day, and it was not easy for him to have today's reputation and status. What he wanted was to have the power to resolve any accidents one day. But then again, it was just a Yao family that was content in a corner. Lin Sun could destroy it with his current strength, let alone with the help of other forces. But Lin Sun didn't choose to do so, because he knew that Yao Tuahai was not an idiot. Since he dared to do so, he must have made full preparations. This made Lin Sun more vigilant. Of course, he was not vigilant about Yao Tuahai, but the power behind Yao Tuahai. So before leaving the Forbidden City, he secretly ordered Vulture and Lin Zhong to help him make arrangements and secretly contact other forces. For example, Keystone Business, Ning family, Yi family, Gong family, and so on. As the first business in the empire, Keystone Business had influence all over the world. Ning family and Yi family were no worse than them. It couldn't be easier to arrange some means to help Lin Sun without disturbing the enemy. Most importantly, compared with the giants like Keystone Business, Yao family, where Yao Tuahai was from, was not worth mentioning at all. The main purpose of the power Lin Sun used was not to deal with Yao Tuahai. "I'll go to see Uncle Taizhan." Lin Sun got up and walked to a quiet room at the back of the cabin. Taizhan was just in a coma and not injured, which made Lin Sun feel at ease. At least it proved that the enemy didn't dare to go too far before seeing him. Green Maple County. The night was as dark as ink. As a county, Green Maple County was naturally more prosperous than Donglin Town. Even though night had arrived, the city was still brightly lit, and there was an endless stream of horses and carriages. Crowds of people rubbed shoulders against each other and flowed in an endless stream. Brothels, taverns and casinos also ushered in the busiest time of the day. Sandway House. This was the most famous brothel in the Green Maple County, and it was the holy land for countless playboys. This was because not only were the girls in the Three Wonders brothel beautiful, but they also had the Three Wonders' ultimate skills. Countless people were infatuated with them. What was Sandway? They were the graceful dance, the exquisite singing, and the marvelous technique in the bedroom. Tonight, the business of the Three Wonder Pavilion was still extremely booming. Young masters that boasted of themselves to be dissolute, wealthy merchants that were extremely wealthy, famous cultivators that possessed extraordinary status, and noble figures from clans and powers had all come here to seek women and indulge in a life of luxury. In room number 9, a young man in a jade robe and embroidered clothes was slightly impatient. The person he'd ordered today was a young woman that had just arrived in the Tri-Wonder Pavilion. He'd heard that she was an outstanding beauty that was like a flower in jade, and the rarest part was that she had a white body. But after waiting for 15 minutes, the girl didn't show up, which made the young man in brocade robe a little impatient. He sneaked out from his clan this time, so it was impossible for him to spend the night in Sandway House. Squeak! Just when the young man in brocade robe was about to lose his patience, the door was pushed open, revealing a graceful figure. It was a young girl with black hair that flowed down like a waterfall. Her clothes were white like snow, her appearance was beautiful and icy cold, and her skin was as clear as ice. She actually gave off an unattainable feeling. The young man's gaze suddenly burned, and even his breathing became heavy. A beauty with an outstanding bearing like ice was rare even in Sandway House. He never imagined that he would actually encounter one. Yao Yukuan? The young girl spoke with a clear and cold voice that was like a mountain spring. The young man in brocade robe was stunned. "Miss, you recognize this young master?" A wisp of detest flashed between the young girl's brows as she said, "It's good that it's you. Come with me." The young man's body shook, and the desire in his heart was extinguished as he realized that there was a problem with the situation. Dong. But he didn't even have the time to react before he felt a pain in his head and instantly lost consciousness. Fong Gui Lane. This was a tavern with a unique style, and those that were able to enter it were all famous figures in Green Maple County. Yao Fangfei was drinking by herself. "Are you young Miss Fangfei?" A man leaned over. He was extremely handsome and spirited. "Who are you?" Yao Fangfei asked vigilantly. "I'm a fated person. I've heard of your reputation and would like to invite young Miss Fangfei for a drink." The man smiled lightly. "I'm sorry, I'm not free." Yao Fangfei flatly refused. But as soon as she finished speaking, she saw the man stretch out his arm and embrace her shoulder, and he seemed to be too bold and direct. Yao Fangfei was just about to flare up and slap this shameless fellow when she felt her vision go black, and her body went limp as she fell into the man's embrace. Fine wine and a beauty, what a satisfying night. Unfortunately, I don't have the fortune to enjoy it. The man finished the wine in his cup in one gulp before carrying Yao Fangfei on his shoulder and walking out of Fong Gui Lane with large strides. Similar incidents occurred in different areas and places in Green Maple County on this night that was as black as ink. From the beginning until the end, it utterly didn't alarm anyone. Yao Trading Company. This was one of the businesses that belonged to the Yao clan. It had been closed for business over 10 days ago, and it was said that it was temporarily closed to take stock of the goods. But tonight, a group of black-clothed people silently appeared in the Yao Trading Company and took control of all the people in charge, guards, and servants. From the beginning until the end, it didn't cause any resistance, nor did it allow anyone to escape. A mine that was tens of kilometers away from Green Maple County was also a business that belonged to the Yao clan. But tonight, all the Yao clan members that were in charge of the mine seemed to have suddenly evaporated and vanished. The night of Green Maple County was bustling, charming, and colorful. But who could have imagined that, under this peaceful surface, there were already dozens of strange disappearances? And most of the missing people were related to the Yao clan. The night grew darker and darker. It was already midnight, but the Yao clan's magnificent hall was still brightly lit. Yao Tuahai sat upright at the center with a dignified expression. He sat there silently and silently. The night seemed to be unusually long tonight. But as long as he endured through tonight, perhaps tomorrow would welcome a brand new dawn, Yao Tuahai pondered in his heart as he waited. However, before dawn arrived, a panicked scream suddenly rang out from afar. In the silent night, it was extremely ear-piercing. Yao Tuahai instantly frowned. Chapter 534. Your Excellency, bad news. Young Master Yukuan of the First Elder, Miss Fangfei of the Third Elder, young Master Yuding of the Ninth Elder. A middle-aged steward rushed into the hall and reported 7 or 8 names in panic. They are all gone. Yao Tuahai said unhappily, "Didn't I say that no clansmen are allowed to go out during this period of time? Why are they gone?" The steward didn't know what to say and his expression changed. "Have you sent someone out to look for them?" Yao Tuahai asked. "Yes, I have. I'm just worried that, if they go out at this time, it will affect your arrangement if something goes wrong." The steward looked helpless. "It doesn't matter. I've planned for a long time this time, so I'm not worried that Lin Sun can make any big wave. You can leave now. Don't leak this matter to others," Yao Tuahai said in a low voice. The steward immediately took the order and left. Yao Tuahai sat there alone, lost in thought. Unknowingly, the dawn broke. A ray of light cut through the darkness and illuminated the world. At this time, Yao Tuahai stood up and murmured in his heart, "Lin Sun, if you don't come today, perhaps no one can stop you from dominating the world in the future. But if you come today, you are doomed to die." At the dawn, Lin Sun appeared outside the gate of Green Maple County alone. In just a quarter of an hour, Lin Sun came to the area where the Yao clan was located. It was easy to find the place where the Yao clan was located. In the whole Green Maple County, the Yao clan was the largest clan and had firmly controlled Green Maple County for hundreds of years. It could be said that almost everyone in Green Maple County knew about the Yao clan. Naturally, it was a piece of cake for Lin Sun to find out where the Yao family resided. There were more than 10 peaks rising from the sky, rising and falling one after another like a long halberd, extremely majestic, piercing into the sky. The Yao clan was right in front of these peaks. At this time, the morning light poured down, and the distant peaks were bathed in mist, bright and beautiful. At the foot of the mountain, there were rows of magnificent buildings built along the mountain. Unlike before, a strand of murderous aura faintly seethed in the sky above the Yao clan's territory, and it shot into the sky and raged like smoke signals, causing the winds and clouds to dim and not dare approach. It was indeed a murderous aura. Looking at it from a distance, Lin Sun knew that it was a strange phenomenon caused by the gathering of practitioners killing intent. There was no doubt that in the depths of the Yao family at this moment, there were already layers of traps, which were comparable to the dragon's pool and tiger's den, waiting for Lin Sun's arrival. However, no one expected that Lin Sun would arrive at dawn. Therefore, when he saw Lin Sun, a guard of the Yao family stationed on the watchtower was obviously stunned. "Who are you?" the guard shouted. Boom! The reply he received was a wisp of vast blade chi that charged into the sky. It tore through space and slashed down like a divine ray of light that was over 100 m in length descending into the world, and it was fierce and overbearing. The watchtower that was more than 30 meters tall collapsed with a loud rumble, and the guard was directly submerged in it, dying a tragic death. Rumble, smoke and dust filled the air. This wisp of blade chi was so powerful that it not only smashed the watchtower, but also split a crack on the magnificent gate of the Yao family. How dare you? Who are you? How dare you come to my Yao family and act wildly? You're tired of living. Suddenly, figures rushed out from the depths of the Yao family, and they appeared in front of the gate amidst bursts of shouts. Lin Sun stood there alone in the distance, his black hair flying in the air, his figure straight, and his handsome face calm and tranquil. In his hand, he carried a broken blade overflowing with starlight, which was brilliant and dazzling, and it set off his extraordinary temperament. What's the matter? I'm here, but you, Yao Tuahai, don't dare to come out to meet me? Lin Sun spoke with a voice that was like a thunderclap that rumbled as it surged out and resounded in the surroundings, causing those figures that charged out to be unable to help but be stunned, and then they burst into an uproar. It's that boy! Ha ha, I was wondering who it was. It turns out that he has come to seek death. Are you in a hurry to be reincarnated? How dare you destroy the gate of the Yao family? You're dead this time. Those members of the Yao family laughed with disdain, excitement, and curiosity. It was the first time for most of them to see Lin Sun's true face. However, when they saw it with their own eyes, they still found it hard to believe that such a handsome boy had become a well-known figure in the world. Lin Sun ignored their ridicule. His eyes were deep and calm, and he stood there. Although he was alone, he had a calm and disdainful spirit. Lin Sun, it's really you. Soon Yao Tuahai appeared. He was elegant, his eyebrows were like lightning, and he was dignified without being angry. 3 years ago, when Lin Sun entered Donglin town for the first time, he had heard of Yao Tuahai's name. He was praised as a master second only to Governor Lu Wujuan of the southwestern province of the empire. The rumors and reputation related to him were innumerable, and he seemed to be in existence that was known to every household in the world. His power and influence were formidable. However, in Lin Sun's eyes, Yao Tuahai had only one identity, that was, his enemy. I'm here. Where are the villagers of Feiyun village? Lin Sun asked in a low voice. My young friend, you really keep your word. I admire you. Yao Tuahai smiled and waved his hand. Soon, a group of shabby villagers were escorted out. There were hundreds of them, densely packed, and they all looked pale and numb, like the walking dead. Although they hadn't seen each other for 3 years, Lin Sun still recognized the village head Shirao Tianren, Hunter Ing Hao, Zhou Zhong, and Xiao at a glance, but when he saw them being escorted out like prisoners, Lin Sun had already told himself to calm down, but there was an uncontrollable anger and hatred bursting out from the bottom of his heart. These villagers were so innocent. They were imprisoned just because they were related to him. No one knew how much torture and pain they had suffered these days. Village head. Suddenly, Lin Sun shouted, I'm here to take you home. His voice shook the world and spread in all directions. Suddenly, those numb villagers became restless. They raised their heads and looked at Lin Sun in the distance. Is that Brother Lin Sun? It's him. I haven't seen him for 3 years. He has grown up. Oh no. Silly boy, why did he come here alone? Doesn't he know it's a trap? When they saw Lin Sun, the villagers were all excited. But soon, when they realized Lin Sun's purpose, they became anxious and uneasy. Lin Sun, how could you be so silly? Do you think they will let us go if you come? Go. Don't mind us. As long as you live, you will avenge us sooner or later. Shirao Tianren roared. That's right, hurry up and leave. Our lives are worthless. It's okay if we die. Lin Sun, you can't die with us like a fool. Aunt Xiao shouted with disheveled hair. Brother Lin Sun, we've talked about it. We'd rather die than let these bad guys get away with it. Go. Ing Luer also shouted anxiously. Hearing these words, Lin Sun was moved and angry. He couldn't help clenching his hands, wishing he could kill all the bastards of the Yao family immediately. Crack! Suddenly, a member of the Yao family whipped the village head's face, leaving a bloody scar. "If you scream again, I'll kill you." It was a man with a strong figure and malicious eyes. As he spoke, he waved the whip, tearing the skin of the villagers and making them scream. "Stop!" Lin Sun was so angry that his eyes almost popped out. "Haha, who do you think you are just because you tell me to stop?" The man laughed. As he spoke, he whipped again, hitting a villager next to him. Blood spurted out from his chest, and he fell to the ground with a scream. "Don't worry. I'll let you know who I am later." Lin Sun took a deep breath and tried hard to restrain the violent emotion in his heart. His voice seemed to be squeezed out from his teeth. "All right, let's get down to business," Yao Tuahai said, stopping the man's actions. "Tell me, what's the matter?" Lin Sun's voice was cold. "Take it easy, my young friend. It's not a bad thing to ask you to come here. On the contrary, it may be a great fortune for you. As long as you bind yourself with this chain, I guarantee in the name of the head of the Yao family that these villagers will be released immediately and the fortune will be given to you personally." Yao Tuahai spoke indifferently, and he spoke in a neither fast nor slow manner. As he spoke, he flicked his sleeve to toss out a chain that was over 30 m long, and it clanged as it descended to the ground nearby. The chain seemed as if it was constructed from bones, and it was suffused with a terrifying icy cold aura. Strands of blood-colored baleful chi were faintly emitted from it, and they transformed into fiendish phantoms that emitted ghostly wails and wolf howls, causing them to seem extremely terrifying. Even in Lin Sun's eyes, he couldn't help but feel shocked. He sensed a kind of dangerous and vicious breath from the chain, which made him feel a chill. There was no doubt that once bound by the chain, the practitioner would immediately lose the power to struggle and resist. "What if I don't agree?" Lin Sun raised his head and looked at Yao Tuahai with cold eyes. "My young friend, you are a smart man. You should know that if you don't agree, not only these villagers will die because of you, but also, do you think you still have a chance to escape in the territory of the Yao family?" Yao Tuahai said leisurely, with a confident look that he was in control of the overall situation. "Now I give you 3 breaths of time to think about it. In every breath, I will kill a villager. This is the only chance. I hope my young friend will think twice before you act." After that, Yao Tuahai put his hands behind his back, looking indifferent and cold. Beside him, the clansmen of the Yao family also sneered and looked at Lin Sun as if they were looking at a dead man, full of ridicule and excitement. "Lin Sun, leave now. Don't agree. These are all wicked people. Their words can't be trusted at all. Leave now." The villagers of Feiyun village shouted anxiously and angrily, urging Lin Sun to leave quickly and ignore them. This made the clansmen of the Yao family more complacent. They didn't dissuade Lin Sun, because they believed that even if Lin Sun wanted to escape, he couldn't escape this time. Chapter 535. 3 breaths time to consider. Obviously, this was a kind of psychological oppression. Yao Tuahai obviously didn't intend to give Lin Sun a chance to consider at all. Either accept or just wait for the villagers of Feiyun village to be slaughtered. Yao Tuahai had been famous for many years and was very shrewd. Since he dared to say so, there was absolutely no hope that he would show any mercy. If it were someone else who was led into a trap step by step, he would have already collapsed under such pressure. But Lin Sun didn't. Although his heart was filled with endless resentment, his expression became calmer and more indifferent. "Yao Tuahai, do you really think you can defeat me?" Lin Sun's voice was also very calm, without any emotional fluctuation, as if Yao Tuahai's so-called threat had no effect on him at all. Clang! A spiritual sword as clear as autumn water appeared between Yao Tuahai's fingers and gently pressed against the throat of a villager. Then, he smiled and said, "Are you sure you want to have a try?" At this moment, the atmosphere suddenly became silent. Everyone's heart tightened, as if a cruel and bloody event would happen as long as Lin Sun disobeyed. Lin Sun didn't talk nonsense anymore. He raised his hand and waved in the void. Many people couldn't help but be stunned. What was he going to do at this time? Only Yao Tuahai seemed to notice something, and his pupils suddenly shrank. Boom! Almost at the same time, a thunderous roar suddenly sounded behind Lin Sun. An Imperial medium warship of 300 meters long, like a fortress in the sky, rumbled and tore the clouds apart. Soaring Eagle warship. Equipped with heavy firepower, it was a heavy weapon of the Empire that could kill overmatches of Tau Insight Realm. Generally, it could only be seen on the vast frontier battlefield. But now, such a warship suddenly appeared in front of the Yao clan in Green Maple County, which made the clansmen of Yao clan a little dull. Green Maple County was the territory of Yao clan. But now, a mid-grade Imperial warship had appeared out of nowhere, evading the eyes and ears of the Yao family. This was simply too inconceivable. Yao Tuahai's eyebrows became solemn, and his eyes were full of lightning, but he didn't panic. He just watched this scene quietly. Boom! It was also at this moment that the Soaring Eagle battleship descended. The cabin door opened and groups of figures walked out. They were densely packed, and it was a grand sight. Obviously, those figures were not ordinary people. Each of them had a dignified and powerful aura, and some of them were even at the Tau Insight realm. Furthermore, it wasn't just one, but a whole group. What did that mean? In the entire Green Maple County, there weren't many Tau Insight Realm cultivators. But now, another group of Tau Insight Realm cultivators had appeared. The scene was not only spectacular, it was utterly shocking. Even in the entire Southwest Province, it was extremely difficult to gather so many Tau Insight Realm cultivators at once. Were they the reinforcements invited by Lin Sun? The members of the Yao clan were bewildered. In this plan, they used strategies such as making a diversion and crossing the sea by deception, to deceive Lin Sun into Donglin Town from the Forbidden City, and then into Green Maple County from Donglin Town. All this was to prevent other forces from helping Lin Sun. But who would have thought that such a terrible situation would still happen? This despicable little bastard, I knew he wouldn't come to die alone. Damn it, how did he do it? It's only been 2 days. Where did he get so many helpers? The intelligence clearly said that after Lin Sun left the Forbidden City, he didn't alarm any other forces at all. How could this happen again? The members of the Yao clan cursed angrily, no longer as complacent as before. Realizing that the situation was not good, they were a little flustered. Lin Sun, if you think that you can save the lives of these villagers by inviting some helpers, you're making a big mistake, Yao Tuahai said in a deep voice. Even at this time, he was still calm and composed without a trace of panic. Lin Sun had to admit that Yao Tuahai was indeed an extremely difficult opponent. At least his calmness in the face of danger couldn't be matched by ordinary people. Just for a moment before Lin Sun spoke, Yao Tuahai's face changed slightly and he cried out involuntarily, "How could this be?" Because at this moment, he saw a group of prisoner-like figures, tied up, being escorted out of the Soaring Eagle battleship. There were more than 100 of them. The people who were being escorted were all members of the Yao family. Even with Yao Tuahai's calmness, he couldn't help feeling a little frightened at this moment. It had been less than 3 days since Lin Sun left the Forbidden City. Not only could they mobilize a group of strong practitioners to help, but they could also capture all the members of the Yao clan who were scattered everywhere. This was too terrible. After all, Green Maple Prefecture was under Yao Tuahai's nose, but he didn't notice any abnormality from beginning to end. Could be imagined how powerful the force that helped Lin Sun this time was. My God! Child Yukuan of the First Elder, Miss Fang Fei of the Third Elder, Child Yuding of the Ninth Elder. Why are they all arrested? At this time, the members of the Yao clan also exclaimed with cold hands and feet. They were all shocked by such a scene. They thought that Lin Sun had already been led by the nose by them. This time, he came alone, which was no different from courting death. Unexpectedly, the sudden appearance of a soaring eagle battleship not only brought a group of powerful practitioners of Tao Insight Realm, but also captured hundreds of members of the Yao clan. Especially those clansmen walking in the front, who were the core lineal descendants of the Yao clan. For a moment, the atmosphere became silent. A series of changes happened so fast that the whole Yao clan was in shock and could not calm down. The wind roared and swept across the world. The soaring eagle battleship anchored on the ground. A group of strong practitioners who came to help, led by Mu Wansu, surrounded Lin Sun behind. And those captured members of the Yao clan looked gloomy and dispirited, like prisoners, exposed in front of the Yao clan in the distance. The situation in front of them was clear at a glance. Lin Sun came not only alone, but also brought a terrifying elite force, including the forces of Keystone Business, Nin family, Yi family, and Gong family. At this moment they gathered together, which could be called a gathering of strong practitioners with great power. And those arrested members of the Yao clan undoubtedly became a trump card in Lin Sun's hand, which had invisibly reversed and changed Lin Sun's situation at the moment. The younger generation will surpass us in time. Within 3 days, you have completed so many arrangements quietly, which is an eye-opener for me. After a long silence, Yao Tuahai couldn't help sighing with emotion. At this time, he was still unshaken in confidence, looking calm and composed. You think too much. I'm just giving you a tooth for a tooth. If you weren't so despicable, why would I need to put on such a big show? Lin Sun said coldly, don't talk nonsense. Let those villagers go, and I'll let your Yao clan go immediately. Exchange. Yao Tuahai's eyes were deep. Patriarch. You can't do that. If so, our advantage will be. Patriarch, it's not easy for us to win today's situation. How can we let Lin Sun get what he wants? As a member of the Yao clan, we should have the consciousness of sacrificing for the clan. In any case, we can't agree with Lin Sun's conditions. The clansmen of the Yao clan shouted anxiously. They all understood that Lin Sun had led a group of experts here today. If they let the villagers go, it would be equivalent to letting Lin Sun have nothing to worry about, and a fierce battle would definitely break out. What's more, Yao clan was likely to suffer unimaginable damage. Under such circumstances, no one was willing to let Lin Sun get what he wanted. Let's do what he said. Exchange. Unexpectedly, Yao Tuahai seemed to be extremely resolute at this moment, and he said resolutely and decisively, they're similarly members of my Yao clan. If I'm able to use the lives of these peasants to exchange for them, then I, Yao Tuahai, will naturally not hesitate in the slightest. Rural pariahs? A cold light surged in Lin Sun's eyes. In my eyes, all the members of the Yao clan together are not as valuable as one of those villagers. Yao Tuahai looked indifferent and expressionless, as if he didn't want to argue with Lin Sun. Immediately, the two sides began to exchange hostages. The process was not thrilling, but the people of the Yao clan felt humiliated with their eyes wide open. When Lin Sun brought back the villagers of Feiyun village, he finally relaxed as if he had unloaded the heaviest stone in his heart. Shirao Tianren, the village head, was so excited that he couldn't speak coherently. They never thought that there would be a chance to be reborn today. Lin Sun handed them over to Mu Wansu and took them into the Eagle battleship to rest. Then he looked at Yao Tuahai in the distance. In an instant, Lin Sun's momentum suddenly changed, and the killing intent that had been suppressed in his heart for a long time burst out. The villagers he cared about most had been rescued, and now it was time to settle the score. Behind Lin Sun, the strong men from Keystone Business, Ning family, Yi family, Gong family and other giants were also waiting for the moment. The invisible killing intent rose to the sky like a beacon of smoke, causing the wind and clouds in the world to change. It was full of a smell of gunpowder that was ready to break out at any moment. On the side of the Yao clan, everyone looked dignified and gnashed their teeth. They all knew that there was bound to be a fierce battle, which was inevitable. It was a matter of life and death for the Yao clan. What made them sad was that without the villagers of Feiyun village as a threat, it would be difficult for the Yao clan to stop the enemy today. It was not that they were pessimistic, but that the enemy sent a group of Tao Insight Realm experts this time. Just this level of strength alone was enough for them to do as they pleased in the southwest provinces of the empire. The Yao clan was just an overlord in Green Maple County, and only Yao Tuahai stood proudly in Tao Insight Realm in the whole clan. How could they not be pessimistic? But at this moment, Yao Tuahai still seemed to be extremely calm, and it was even to the extent that a trace of imperceptible burning excitement arose in his eyes that surged with lightning. He glanced at Lin Sun and the strong men behind Lin Sun expressionlessly. Suddenly, he smiled and said in a loud voice, "Lin Sun, do you really think you have won? Wrong. As I said, you are doomed to fail to change what happened today. No matter how many helpers you invite, you are doomed to be destroyed." Chapter 536. Yao Tuahai's words surprised the powerhouses around Lin Sun. Was this guy out of his mind? Annihilated? How could the Yao clan dare to say such nonsense with their little strength? It was even to the extent that even the clansmen of the Yao clan were astounded and bewildered. Only Lin Sun felt a strong sense of danger. Before he came to Green Maple County, he knew that Yao Tuahai wouldn't dare to go against him so crazily. In other words, Lin Sun had been suspecting that there was another powerful force behind Yao Tuahai that was manipulating everything. After hearing Yao Tuahai's words, Lin Sun immediately concluded that his suspicion was very likely to be true. Clatter, but before Lin Sun could react, he heard the sound of metal rubbing against each other on the ground, not far away. It was a chain made of white bones, emitting a terrifying cold aura. Its surface was surging with blood-red evil spirit, which evolved into a fiendish phantom. This was originally a treasure thrown by Yao Tuahai in order to make Lin Sun surrender, but a series of changes happened later, so that many people had the opportunity to ignore this chain. However, right at this moment it strangely moved, as if it had a life of its own. It suddenly went taut, and like a white-boned spear, it suddenly struck out. Boom! The void suddenly burst like a piece of paper, unable to bear the power of this blow. It was too horrible. It was like an unparalleled light of white bones that could penetrate and destroy everything. Lin Sun's face suddenly changed and he gasped. His skin was stinging and his hair stood on end. He felt a suffocating threat of death. Clang! He roared and exerted all his strength to the limit in an instant. The broken blade in his hand surged with silver starlight and slashed out. The distance was too close for Lin Sun to dodge, so he could only face it head-on. Bang! An earth-shattering collision sounded and the world was in chaos. Lin Sun felt like he was hit hard. His arms were almost shattered, and blood spurted from his mouth and nose. He was almost shattered into pieces in an instant. The indescribable pain made Lin Sun let out a muffled groan and flew out. The strength of this strike was too terrifying. If it wasn't for his physique attaining perfection, then he would have probably been killed by this strike. With Lin Sun's current strength, he could confront a strong practitioner of Tao Insight Realm. But now, with just one blow, he was completely defeated and had no power to fight back at all. It could be imagined how terrifying the power of the bone chain was. Lin! The nearby experts cried out in alarm. All of this happened too quickly, and it was completed in an instant. It was so fast that they didn't even have the time to react, let alone rescue him. In fact, no one had expected that a mere white bone chain would actually instantly transform into a great killing intent that suddenly erupted. To actually be able to block this seat's attack, what an interesting little fellow. The white bone shackles emitted a hoarse, low, and cold voice. It possessed a strange power that shook one's soul and was extremely mysterious. Lin Sun staggered to the ground while smoke and dust suffused the air, and his expression had become extremely heavy. This strike had almost taken his life, and it caused him to be unable to calm down. What kind of power was this? Stop it first. The faces of those experts from Keystone Business and other forces darkened, and they attacked together. They were all in Tao Insight realm, but now Lin Sun was injured under their noses, which made them feel a little ashamed. Rumble the world was rioting, filled with terrible secret methods and precious light. The void collapsed, the earth cracked, and the raging power of the Great Way spread like a tide. A strong practitioner of Tao Insight realm could burn mountains and boil seas, and destroy a part of the world. At this time, a group of strong practitioners of Tao Insight realm attacked, which was like a monstrous disaster with unimaginable destructive power. The clansmen of Yao family in the distance felt cold all over. They couldn't imagine what kind of terrible disaster would be caused if this group of strong practitioners rushed into their clan. Only Yao Tuahai was indifferent. He stood there with his hands behind his back, and his eyes were bursting with lightning. There was also a touch of excitement in his heart. Finally, it was time to end it. Ho ho, you little bugs, how dare you challenge me? Get out. The dry and cold voice resounded like a thunderclap that shook the heavens and the earth, and it was like a peerless king was displaying his might. With a bang, a majestic figure suddenly rushed out of the white bone chain and filled the world. With a wave of his hand, the Great Way roared and destroyed everything. Puff, puff, puff. In an instant, the group of strong practitioners of Tao Insight realm was violently shaken out like paper. They coughed up blood and staggered to the ground, looking extremely embarrassed. This was too shocking. Who could imagine that a group of great practitioners of Tao Insight realm, who could run amok in the southwestern province of the empire, was so weak at this moment? The eyes of the Yao family widened as if they had seen a miracle. They even stopped breathing. It was too strong. With a wave of his hand, he drove back a group of strong practitioners of Tao Insight realm. The Great Way roared and shook all directions. Was this a life and death realm king? Immediately they burst into cheers and were extremely proud and excited. With such a strong practitioner, it was no wonder that the patriarch was so confident and disdainful. Yao Tuahai, on the other hand, had a smile on his face. He looked like he had everything under control, and everything was under his control. Yes, this was his real trump card. Yao Tuahai had been in the world for many years. How could he not know that if he wanted to kill the current Lin Sun, he would suffer many twists and turns? How could he not know that a young talent like Lin Sun would naturally not come to die alone? But Yao Tuahai dared to do so because he was not afraid at all. The majestic figure seemed to stand in the sky. As soon as it appeared, a terrible chi enveloped all directions and completely covered this area. Vaguely, the world seemed to be wailing, and the void collapsed. It could be clearly seen that around the majestic figure, there were many ancient Great Way emerging, mysterious and terrible, as if it was about to suppress all the forces in the world. This was definitely the power of Tao Insight realm, even many times more powerful than reincarnation developing realm. At a distance, people felt desperate and small. It was like facing a king standing proudly on the top of the mountains. They could only bow down to him, and his majesty could not be desecrated. The most terrible thing was that so many people present could not see clearly the appearance of the majestic figure, which was as unfathomable as a god. For a moment, the faces of those Tao Insight realm strongmen from Keystone Business and other forces changed dramatically, and a touch of fear surged in their hearts, as if falling into an ice cave. Life-death realm. With their eyesight, they could naturally judge the power of the majestic figure, which made them feel incredible. Who could imagine that in the Yao family of Green Maple County, there was such a king who could look down on the whole empire and stand at the top of the world? Even Lin Sun was stunned. Life-death realm. No wonder Yao Tuahai dared to be so fearless, but Lin Sun still didn't understand why Yao Tuahai wanted to kill him after such a long time of planning, even at the cost of offending Keystone Business and Ning family. What was his real intention? In Lin's view, There must be some motive behind any action. A shrewd person like Yao Tuahai would not do all this crazily if he didn't have enough intention and purpose. All this took a long time to describe, but actually happened in a flash. The appearance of a life-death realm was enough to deter all enemies in all directions, and make the Tao Insight Realm strongmen unable to resist at all. But it was obvious that the target of this life-death realm was Lin Sun, and he directly ignored those Tao Insight Realm strongmen as insects. "Little guy, come with me. A talent like you will only be buried if you stay in Xiao Empire." The majestic figure opened his mouth. His voice was dry and cold, like a gust of wind from hell, which made people's hair stand on end and made them feel cold. He couldn't struggle. Just an invisible power suppressed Lin Sun to the point that he couldn't even move a finger. The gap between their realms was too great. It seemed that the opponent could easily wipe him out with a thought. This was the power of life-death realm, which overlooked all living beings and controlled them. If one wanted to resist it, he must be at the same realm. Otherwise, all the people could only crawl like ants. Lin Sun once again felt the sense of absolute powerlessness, but at this moment, he didn't show any panic or despair on his face. "Why?" Lin Sun asked in a hoarse voice, with blood dripping from the corner of his mouth. Although the blow just now didn't kill him, he suffered some injuries. Yes, why? Yao Tuahai had schemed for so long and finally used the trump card of life-death realm. Was it just to take Lin Sun away? Ha ha ha, Lin Sun, you should feel lucky now. I have said that I will give you a great fortune. Now, this fortune is right in front of you. You should not hate me but be grateful to me. In the distance, Yao Tuahai laughed complacently. Lin Sun ignored him and just stared at the majestic figure in the distance, as if he wanted to see through his real identity and see through his purpose. Unfortunately, all this was doomed to be in vain. Everything about life-death realm was not something he could guess. Come with me, and you will understand later. The majestic figure didn't hesitate anymore. He waved his sleeve and stretched out his hand to grab Lin Sun on the ground. His movement was as casual as catching a bug. But under this blow, not to mention Lin Sun, even a great practitioner of reincarnation development realm would find it difficult to dodge. Lin Sun. Those strong practitioners of Tao Insight realm shouted with grief and anger in their hearts. They couldn't bear to watch anymore. Only Lin Sun seemed very calm. He sat on the ground, motionless, as if he had given up all struggle. But when the big hand was about to fall and cover Lin Sun, suddenly, a fist blocked in front of Lin Sun. That fist seemed to have shattered space and traversed the river of time as it approached, and it carried a courageous and all-powerful imposing aura as it appeared in the world. Chapter 537. That fist was simple, heavy, and without a trace of worldly aura. However, it had a magnificent and boundless momentum, as if it could connect the past and the present, bravely moving forward and crushing everything. Dong! The giant hand that was descending was shattered by the punch and turned into a rain of light. Then, the light rain was also obliterated by the fist wind. The most frightening thing was that the fist went straight toward the distant majestic figure. It was simple, direct, and domineering. It was enough to make the world tremble. That was the power of a life-and-death realm king, but it was suddenly shattered by the fist. Everyone stood there in a daze. Originally, a collision of this level alone would be enough to pulverize everything and obliterate all living beings. However, under the suppression of the fist wind, everything was dissolved into nothingness. Just what kind of power was needed to achieve this? Those Tao Insight Realm experts were completely excited. They realized that at this critical moment, there must be a life-and-death realm king at the same level. On the opposite side, all the clansmen of the Yao family were dumbfounded, as if struck by lightning. A life-and-death realm king's attack was blocked? How could this be possible? Especially Yao Tuahai, who was complacent a moment ago. His face changed dramatically and his whole body stiffened. He thought that the outcome had been determined and Lin Sun was doomed to be powerless. Who would have thought that such a change would happen? Only Lin Sun looked very calm. However, in the depths of his heart, no one noticed that he was extremely nervous. But at this moment, he finally relaxed. Ning Bugue. The majestic figure was a little surprised. His whole body was steaming with terrifying water light, like a sea god standing in the ocean, surrounded by rolling waves. Hee, I was wondering who would be so shameless to attack a junior. It turns out to be you, a greedy old bug. I didn't expect that you would dare to cross the border from the Empire of the Dark to Xiao Empire. Today you will die here. Suddenly, a rough laugh resounded, shaking the 9 heavens and spreading out. It shocked the clansmen of the Yao family, making them dizzy and their qi and blood churn. They almost lost their minds. Iron Blood King Ning Bugue. The entire crowd was in an uproar. They didn't think that the one who made the move would be this legendary iron-blooded warrior. He once swore that he would live his life to fight. Even if he died, he would lie on a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood, sleeping with Tian Shou and Earth. This king had spent his entire life on the battlefield, and his might shook the world. Now that he appeared in the world, who wouldn't be shocked? Even if it was Lin Sun, after hearing Ning Bugue's heroic laughter, his heart was stirred. The so-called king should be like this. Rumble. His voice hadn't finished resounding out when a tall and majestic figure appeared in the sky, and he shouted loudly, "Old bug, get your ass up here and fight." His might was disdainful, like a god of war overlooking the world. Humph, why wouldn't I dare? Did you really think that I didn't go out all these years because I was afraid of you? The imposing figure let out a cold snort. He didn't seem to move, but his entire body disappeared into thin air and rushed beyond the 9 heavens. Ha ha ha, I'll kill you today, you shameless old man. Let's see if you still dare to be so stubborn. Ning Bugue laughed out loud, stepped into the void, and followed him. Suddenly, a shocking battle between the kings of the life and death realm began in the sky. It was too far away, as if they were fighting in the starry sky, and no one could see it clearly. They could only hear the deity-like roars that shook the sky, destroyed the clouds, and surged in all directions. There were also countless dazzling divine rainbows that crisscrossed in the sky, like a light rain that was formed by the exploding stars. It was extremely terrifying. This was the battle between the kings of the life and death realm. Once it broke out in the world, it would definitely be a disaster like the end of the world. It could easily destroy mountains, rivers, and cities, and plunge people into misery and suffering. Only a battle above the 9 heavens could avoid the tragedy caused by such fluctuations. Everyone was shocked. No matter if it was the enemy or friend, no one could imagine that today, in Green Maple County, they would be fortunate enough to witness a battle between the kings of the life and death realm. In the past, conflicts of this level were rarely seen even on the border battlefield, because the damage caused was too great. As a citizen of the Empire, you, Yao Tuahai, secretly colluded with the Dark Tribe with evil intentions. Do you know that this is treason? Do you want to kill your whole family? Suddenly, Lin Sun stood up and shouted. His words woke up all the Tao Insight Realm warriors, as well as the people of the Yao clan who were in a state of shock. All of a sudden, many people's expressions changed. For the Empire, the Dark Tribe was the biggest enemy of mankind. Since ancient times, countless sages and powerful figures had fought on the border battlefield, and paid a lot of effort and sacrifice in exchange for the peace of the Empire today. Now, as the Patriarch of Green Maple County and one of the most famous practitioners of the Tao Insight Realm in the southwest province of the Empire, Yao Tuahai secretly colluded with the Dark Tribe and invited a king of the Dark Tribe to deal with Lin Sun. This was no different from treason. If this was spread out, the whole Yao clan would be the target of public criticism, and would be executed as a traitor of mankind. The words of Blood King Ning Bugue had undoubtedly proved that all of this was true, and the people of the Yao clan could not refute it even if they wanted to. Kill. Kill the spy of the dark tribe lurking in the Empire. Damn it. You are the people of the Empire, but you work for the bastards of the dark tribe. You deserve to die. Don't talk nonsense. Today, we must destroy the Yao clan and pull out the cancer that secretly colluded with the dark tribe. Those strongmen from Keystone Business and other forces were completely enraged, especially those from Ning family, who had followed Iron Blood King to the battlefield. Many of their comrades had died on the battlefield. Now that they learned that Yao Tuahai had colluded with the dark alien tribe, it was imaginable how angry they were. Boom. The crowd was furious. Many strong practitioners attacked with murderous intent and anger. They vowed to destroy the Yao clan. At this moment, it was impossible to stop them. The faces of the people of the Yao clan turned pale, and they were scared out of their wits. How could they expect that the situation would develop to this point? Patriarch, is this true? Someone roared sadly. The other people of the Yao clan were also panic-stricken. Colluding with the dark tribe? This was a crime of extermination. After killing these enemies, I will give you an explanation. Now is not the time to talk nonsense. Yao Tuahai took a deep breath and his face was cold. Until now, he did not intend to give up, which showed how unwilling he was in his heart. In fact, he was really going crazy. Just when the trap was about to come to a perfect end, Ning Bugue, the Blood King, appeared at the last moment and suddenly reversed the situation. How could Yao Tuahai accept this? But it was useless to think too much. Only by fighting there might be a chance of survival. If he did not fight, he was doomed to be destroyed. Kill! Yao Tuahai roared, and his beard and hair were flying. The battle was completely ignited. No one paid attention to the confrontation between the kings above the ninth heaven, nor did they have the energy to pay attention to it. A group of strong practitioners of Tao Insight Realm attacked the Yao clan angrily like God of Death, setting off a bloody storm. It was impossible for the Yao clan to sit back and wait for death. They also made the most decisive counterattack and desperately fought back, because they all knew that today's battle was simply unavoidable. It was either live or die. For a moment, the whole world was filled with the roaring of chilly wind, the raging divine light, and the terrifying treasure light shot into the sky and crushed the void. Mysterious secret techniques were released, and it was as gorgeous as fireworks. It was too tragic. In just a moment, the gate of the Yao clan was broken, and the rows of houses collapsed and turned into ruins. The void was dyed with the color of blood, and the sounds of fighting, screams, and angry roars could be heard everywhere. Smoke billowed and blood danced in the air. Without the support of Life and Death Realm kings, the huge Yao clan was completely powerless under the siege of a group of angry Tao Insight Realm practitioners. They were constantly defeated, and their clansmen died tragically. This was a bloody and tragic scene, because the commotion caused was too great. Because the noise was too big, it even alarmed many practitioners in the Green Maple County. But no one dared to come close, because the sound of fighting was too terrifying, and the power of the collision was too strong. Not to mention ordinary people, even practitioners who came close might be affected, and their lives would be threatened. Oh my God, is someone trying to destroy the Yao clan? The Green Maple County fell into a great shock. In the battlefield, Lin Sun also moved. His black hair fluttered in the wind, and he used ice dragon steps, crossing the void like a flash of lightning, and rushed to Yao Tuahai. Yao Tuahai, you will die in my hands today. With a cold voice, Lin Sun waved his sleeves, and the 4 image dragon pillars turned into divine rainbows and fell from the sky, imprisoning Yao Tuahai. Boom! In an instant, only Lin Sun and Yao Tuahai were left in the illusion, isolated from the outside world. Haha, you? Not to mention that you were injured just now, even in your heyday, you are just an ant for me. Yao Tuahai sneered. He was trapped in the illusion. At first, he was shocked, but then he was delighted, because he found that there was only Lin Sun in the illusion, which was less threatening than the outside world. Clang! Lin Sun didn't talk nonsense at all. A long spear suddenly appeared in his hand, and the dark gray body of the spear overflowed with obscure and mysterious formations. Then it evolved into a suit of armor, covering Lin Sun's whole body. In an instant, Lin Sun's momentum suddenly rose to a terrible height, like a god of slaughter, full of the breath of destruction. Armor with spiritual tattoos? Yao Tuahai's pupils shrank and he was shocked. He said in surprise, "Is this the shattering sorrow you refined?" Swish. Lin Sun didn't bother to talk nonsense at all. The long spear, like a dragon, turned into thousands of shadows and rushed to kill. These days, he had been accumulating endless anger and hatred in his heart. If he didn't kill Yao Tuahai with his own hands today, he would never forgive himself. Boom! The shadows of the spear, like 1,000 mountains piling up, pressed down, fierce and overbearing, disturbing the void and making a harsh sound. "Haha, you are really arrogant. Do you really think you can defeat me with a suit of spiritual tattoos? Now that you have come to me, leave your life here." Yao Tuahai chuckled and attacked bravely. A touch of burning greed flashed in his eyes. He realized that if he could control the shattering sorrow, with his strength in the middle level of Tao Insight Realm, he might be able to fight his way out and escape today. P.S. Added update: Goldfish saw your monthly vote. To be honest, it's so cool and happy. This kind of encouragement and support is what I need in the boring process of writing. Thank you again. Chapter 538. Kill. Yao Tuahai's elegant face was full of killing intent. He took out a golden spiritual sword. With a buzzing sound, it evolved into layers of golden sword qi. Gungjin swordsmanship. It contained the power of the concept of gold, which was extremely fierce and murderous. A trace of sword qi could easily kill a sea spirit realm cultivator. This was not an exaggeration. The reason why the Tao Insight Realm was so powerful was that it could comprehend and control the power of the concept of Great Way. This kind of power could communicate with heaven and earth. It had incredible power, which was not comparable to ordinary power. Bang! 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 Lin Sun waved his long spear. The boundless qi roared and swept across the universe. Wherever it passed, all the sword qi collapsed into a rain of light like paper and disappeared. Yao Tuahai was a little surprised. "I didn't expect that you, a grandmaster of spiritual tattoos, also have such ability in martial arts." He was aggressive, surrounded by golden light, and the spiritual sword in his hand glowed, splashing infinite sword waves. The void was in disorder, torn apart by the dazzling power of gold. The sword qi flowed like a surging wave, as if to sweep the sky. As one of the most famous practitioners of Tao Insight Realm in the southwest province of the Empire, Yao Tuahai's strength was indeed strong, and he deserved his reputation. At this moment, his beard and hair fluttered, his expression was majestic, and his whole body was covered with golden light. He was like a golden sword god, with unparalleled terrible power. "Young man, although you have the death of shattering, which gives you the power to fight with me, your cultivation is too low after all. Do you want to kill me? You're dreaming." Yao Tuahai laughed and exerted his cultivation to the extreme, pressing step by step to completely suppress Lin Sun. "Really?" Lin Sun looked indifferent, with cold lightning in his eyes. Holding the long spear, he was full of the qi of boundless qi, full of destructive breath. Using the ice dragon steps, he rushed forward like lightning. Clang! 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 In the void, the golden sword qi intertwined, each like a waterfall, sprinkling all over the sky. The golden light was blazing, and it could be clearly seen that the void was pierced, which made people feel cold. This was Yao Tuahai's power. He didn't give Lin Sun a chance to approach at all. The golden sword qi surged like the tide as it connected the heavens and the earth, and it was an extremely shocking scene. If it was in the outside world, then it would surely wipe out an expanse of mountains and rivers. A vast gray aura surged around Lin Sun's body. The broken death rumbled, making his entire body illusory and showing signs of destruction. Streaks of golden sword chi fell, and were about to cover Lin Sun. But an amazing scene appeared. Lin Sun waved his long spear, and wherever the tip of the spear pointed, even the sea of sword chi was wiped out in an instant, unable to stop Lin Sun. Yao Tuahai's expression changed once again. The death of shattering was indeed special. It was worthy of being a peerless treasure whose name shook the world. It could actually resist such dense sword chi, which made him deeply shocked. After that, his gaze blazed with desire. The strength of the shattering sorrow had tempted him even more, and he was determined to obtain it. Dang! 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 Yao Tuahai exerted his full strength, and a myriad of rays of golden light transformed into a boundless rain of swords. It was like a blazing golden screen of swords had descended into the world, and it was a terrifying scene. This was a trump card. Not to mention Sea of Soul Realm, even ordinary Paradise Realm existences would find it hard to resist such an attack. Boom! Lin Sun did not dodge. He charged forward, appearing equally powerful. But at this moment, the long spear in his hand suddenly let out a clear cry that resounded through the heavens, producing extremely terrifying waves of destruction that swept out in all directions. This attack was extremely terrifying. It suddenly erupted, and the thousands of sword chi were all crushed and destroyed in an instant. And the tip of the spear had already pierced through the air, piercing towards Yao Tuahai's throat. It was too fast. This power was also incomparably powerful. It seemed to be able to destroy the void and destroy everything. Yao Tuahai's entire body shook, and his pupils shrank. Clang! He blocked with his sword. But there was an ear-piercing explosion, and the spiritual sword in his hand was instantly shattered. Not good. How could it be so terrifying? Yao Tuahai gasped, and a chill rose in his heart. He had never thought that Lin Sun could use the death of shattering to possess such power. You want to kill me? Dream on! Yao Tuahai roared. He took out a blood-colored banner and gently waved it. Thousands of waves of blood swept out in all directions, and the faint sound of ghosts crying and gods howling could be heard. The blood ghost streamer. It was an extremely vicious treasure, and it was extremely difficult to refine. Any practitioner who was involved in the blood-colored waves would either be dismembered or turned into a pile of bones in an instant. Boom! However, in just a moment the sea of blood was erased. The blood ghost streamer had just begun to show its power when it was pierced by the spear and burst into pieces like a rag. This, Yao Tuahai's face changed again. He was shocked and angry. He knew the power of the armors with spiritual tattoos, but he had never thought that the death of shattering could be so powerful that it could destroy two of his treasures in succession. It was simply invincible. Kill! Before Yao Tuahai could react, Lin Sun had come again. He was strong, resolute, and disdainful. No matter who it was, no one could stop Lin Sun from killing Yao Tuahai today. 3 years ago, this old guy almost killed him and Xiaji. Now, he even colluded with a king of the dark tribe to harm him. How could Lin Sun tolerate this? What made Lin Sun most afraid was that Yao Tuahai was extremely shrewd and ruthless. Once Lin Sun let him live today, he was destined to be an unpredictable hidden danger in the future. Boom! The tip of the spear was like a bolt of lightning, like a dragon, like an illusion, like a bubble, and carried an aura of destruction as it swept through space, and it carried the imposing aura of supremacy. Humph! Today I'll let you understand the gap between Tao Insight Realm and Sea Spirit Realm. Yao Tuahai was also completely angry. His repeated failures made him realize Lin Sun's strength, and he was determined to kill him. Boom! Suddenly, he took out a golden octagonal pagoda. An array of mysterious light rushed out and swept over Lin Sun like a waterfall. Dong! With a flash of light, The pagoda glowed and imprisoned Lin Sun in it. Then, the pagoda rotated and turned into the size of a palm, falling into Yao Tuahai's hand. Ha ha! Holding the golden octagonal pagoda, Yao Tuahai couldn't help laughing. No matter how powerful you are still taken into my pagoda. This pagoda was an ancient treasure, which Yao Tuahai found in an ancient relic more than 100 years ago. It contained the dark golden true light, and with a gentle sweep, it could engulf everything. Even a powerhouse in the Tao Insight realm would not be able to escape. The most incredible thing was that this pagoda had 9 floors, and each floor was sealed with different powers, which were unfathomable and incredibly powerful. Just like now, Yao Tuahai was barely able to utilize the dark gold true light that was sealed within the first level of the pagoda. But even then, its might was already extraordinary, and with a slight refinement, it wouldn't be long before any living being that was suppressed within it would transform into a pool of pus and blood. When I refine you, the death of shattering will belong to me. At that time, who can stop me? Yao Tuahai looked up and laughed. He thought that today was destined to be a fierce battle, but he didn't expect that Lin Sun would be so stupid to fight with him alone in this dreamland. This was like a prey coming to him, and it came with a powerful armor with spiritual tattoos. How could Yao Tuahai not be complacent? He was very sure that as long as he seized the time and took advantage of the fact that Blood King Ningbugue couldn't split himself, he would definitely be able to escape today. At that time, he could go anywhere in the world. Who could stop Yao Tuahai? Dong. However, at this moment, the golden pagoda suddenly shook and almost fell from Yao Tuahai's hand. This made his eyes narrow, and his heart trembled. Could it be that even the golden true light couldn't suppress the puppy? Buzz! Yao Tuahai took a deep breath, gritted his teeth, and activated his power. The pagoda shone, and there was a kind of sacred sound of gods chanting sutras. Sure enough, the pagoda just shook for a while and then calmed down. Yao Tuahai's face turned pale. Although this pagoda was extremely powerful, it also consumed a lot of power. Just now, it consumed more than half of Yao Tuahai's power. Dong. But before Yao Tuahai could relax, he saw the pagoda shining brightly and shaking violently. Yao Tuahai's palm was numb, and he almost couldn't control it. Boom! At this moment, the pagoda shook violently, and a figure suddenly rushed out from the bottom, holding a long spear and fiercely stabbing at Yao Tuahai. Not good. Yao Tuahai's mind almost collapsed. He roared and hurriedly dodged, but his shoulder was inevitably swept by the spear. The destructive breath raged, and his entire right arm was smashed into pieces, and blood rained everywhere. How is this possible? Yao Tuahai's eyes almost popped out and he almost went crazy. Since he got this ancient pagoda, he had almost never failed and never failed. But today, an accident happened to a young man in Sea Spirit Realm, which was unimaginable. Lin Sun, wearing the armor with the vast air and holding a long spear, rushed out. Without any unnecessary words, he swung the long spear and stabbed at Yao Tuahai. At this moment, he was like a god of death reborn from the fire. He was going to destroy everything, and his power was shocking. The long spear shook the sky. Although Yao Tuahai struggled to resist and even tried to use the pagoda to fight against the enemy again, Lin Sun would not give him another chance. Puff! In just a moment, Yao Tuahai's head was blown up by the spear. Before he could make a sound, his body was also swept into pieces by the terrible destructive power, and his soul turned into flying ash. He died on the spot. This great practitioner, who was famous in the southwestern province of the empire, was completely killed. Probably, he couldn't imagine that a young man at Sea Spirit Realm, who had been injured before, could kill him with a spiritual tattoo armor. Was it wrong? Not at all. It should be noted that even if Lin Sun did not use the spiritual armor, as early as in the ancient spirit world, he had personally killed a cultivator in Tao Insight Realm. Now, his cultivation, soul, and physique had reached the unprecedented extreme of sea-spirit realm, and he also had a great killing weapon like the shattering of sorrow. It would be strange if he could not kill Yao Tuahai. Of course, this battle was not without thrills, and even Lin Sun was almost killed. Everything was because of the golden octagonal 9-story pagoda. Chapter 539. Clang. Lin Sun put away the broken sorrow. Yao Tuahai was dead, and the hatred was ended, which made Lin Sun feel much more relaxed. Without any emotion, he began to clean up the spoils. To Lin Sun's surprise, Yao Tuahai, the head of Yao family, had no other valuable items except some spiritual crystals and elixirs needed for cultivation. But soon, Lin Sun's eyes fell on the octagonal 9-story golden pagoda. Lin Sun reached out his hand and grabbed it. The treasure was surprisingly heavy, as if he was holding a mountain. It weighed no less than 50,000 kilograms, so Lin Sun had to use his strength to barely hold it. It had an ancient style, and its body was octagonal in shape. It was brilliant as if it was made of gold, but if one looked carefully, the body of the tower was actually the color of a simple and unadorned jade. However, the luster it emitted was a magnificent golden color, and it seemed grand and imposing. Although it was only the size of a palm, it was not difficult to see that the pagoda was extremely mysterious. The body of the pagoda was octagonal and divided into 8 parts, each part of which formed a place of its own, with mysterious images such as the sun, the moon, the mountains and rivers, the sky and the earth, the stars, and the ancient gods. It was like a mark of an ancient world that was divided into 8 parts and branded on the body of the pagoda, and it naturally possessed a powerful aura that contained the ages. In an instant, Lin Sun couldn't help but be in a trance, as if he saw a tower standing in the vast starry sky and the boundless earth countless years ago, holding up one side of the sky, guarding the 8 poles and illuminating the 9 provinces. It was a pity that the pagoda was damaged. There should have been inscriptions on the top of the pagoda, but now there were only incomplete traces. He could only vaguely see the word none. The handwriting was like the convergence of the Tao of Heaven, and it was built in every stroke. Although it was incomplete, it had a kind of shocking majesty, which made Lin feel small and indescribable oppressive. It was just an incomplete handwriting, but it had such divine power, which made Lin Sun more aware of the extraordinariness of the pagoda. It was true. Just like before, he was swept into it in an instant and imprisoned in the first floor of the pagoda. It was full of dark golden light and released a terrifying power that almost obliterated Lin Sun. Fortunately, the profound gold spirit light had clearly not been refined and controlled by Yao Tuahai, which gave Lin Sun an opportunity to use all of the power of the shattering sorrow to escape the pressure of the profound gold spirit light. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. Without a doubt, this wordless pagoda was surely an ancient treasure that possessed boundless might, and even Yao Tuahai hadn't fully grasped it. Lin Sun put away the treasure and planned to study it carefully in the future. If he could control it, he would undoubtedly have one more trump card. Whoosh! Without further delay, Lin Sun put away the 4-image coiling dragon pillars and removed the illusion. The battle in the outside world had already come to an end. At this moment, the entire Yao clan had practically transformed into a scene of desolation, and the ground was in a mess while dust and dirt suffused the air. The nearby world had suffered great damage. Broken corpses could be seen everywhere, and the blood-stained and cracked ground was shocking. How could the Yao clan, which could only dominate Green Maple County, resist the furious bombardment of a group of strong practitioners of Tao Insight Realm? There was a burst of miserable cries in the distance. Lin Sun looked up and saw a group of women, children, old and young. Obviously, they were the descendants of Yao clan, but they didn't have much fighting power. At this moment, with the destruction of Yao clan, they all became prisoners and were crying bitterly. On the other side, those practitioners from Keystone Business, Ning family, Yi family and Gong family were counting the spoils of the war. This was the disaster of annihilation. No matter how powerful a clan was in the past, when it was destroyed, everything would eventually disappear. Lin Sun looked at this scene quietly, with no sadness or joy on his face. This was what they deserved, and they couldn't blame anyone. Yao Tuahai is dead? At this time, Mu Wansu approached and glanced at Yao Tuahai's body not far away. She couldn't help but feel shocked. She didn't expect that Lin Sun really killed Yao Tuahai. Yao Tuahai was a big shot in the middle realm of Tao Insight Realm. He was famous in the southwest of the empire. But now, he was killed by Lin Sun, a young man of Sea Spirit Realm. If this was spread out, it would cause a storm. Lin Sun nodded and looked at the crying women and children in the distance, asking, "What will happen to those people?" Mu Wansu said casually, "It's very simple. Just hand them over to the Imperial Army." This time, the Yao clan colluded with the Dark Alien tribe. The evidence is conclusive. It's not a problem to exterminate their whole family. Lin Sun didn't ask any more questions. "Let's go. The Iron Blood King is waiting for you in the battleship," Mu Wansu said softly. Lin Sun was shocked. He realized that the battle above the ninth heaven had already come to an end, but he didn't know who won and who lost in the end. Thinking of this, he turned around and walked to the Eagle battleship in the distance. But halfway, he stopped again and looked back at the Yao clan in the distance. It had been reduced to ruins. Smoke and dust filled the air, and bursts of crying echoed on the bloody ground. Then, Lin Sun withdrew his gaze and never looked back. But deep in his heart, he had an unprecedented determination. As long as he was alive, he would never let such a disaster befall the Lin family. At noon, the Eagle battleship roared and rose into the sky, disappearing into the horizon. On this day, the Yao clan, which had been famous in the southwest province of the empire for hundreds of years, was destroyed in one day. All the places where they had occupied were in ruins. Green Maple County was shocked. Countless practitioners were shocked. This matter even spread throughout the southwest province of the empire, causing an uproar and discussion. The great Yao clan was erased and disappeared from the map of the empire. This was definitely a big event. It was shocking. Later, the truth gradually came out, and many practitioners finally realized that all this was done by Lin Sun. However, no one could imagine that such a famous young grandmaster of spiritual tattoos could have such terrible power that he could destroy a powerful clan in a day and night. On the other hand, some of the great powers were clearly aware that the shadows of the dark races were behind this incident of sect annihilation, and a true battle between kings had occurred in the past. But it was so appalling that it would only cause turmoil in the world if it was spread out. Therefore, the news was completely blocked. Few people even knew that the Yao clan had betrayed the empire. The Eagle battleship rose into the sky and flew towards the forbidden city of the empire. There were many rooms in the spacious cabin. At this time, the Blood King, Ning Bugue, was laughing heroically in one of the rooms. "Ha ha ha, I never thought that it would be the right decision to come here. This old man has been wanting to kill that old smelly worm since a long time ago. Unfortunately, that fellow is greedy for life and is afraid of death. He hid in his nest and refused to come out. This old man could only watch helplessly." Ning Bugue, who was tall and strong, sat on a soft couch casually. He was unruly and rough. "It's a pity that the old bug is so cunning. Although he was seriously injured by me, he escaped in the end." Ning Bugue smacked his lips and felt regretful. Speaking of this, he looked at Lin Sun and said, "Little guy, you've helped the empire eliminate a disaster by a fluke. Not bad, not bad." Lin Sun hurriedly said, "If it weren't for you, I would have been helpless even if I found out the betrayal of the Yao clan." Ning Bugue laughed and said, "You're such an arrogant person. Why are you so humble now?" There was a touch of admiration in his eyes. He was very clear that Lin Sun's performance this time was absolutely amazing. Lin soon killed Yao Tuahai alone, perhaps with the help of the power of the shattering sorrow. But Lin soon did not just do that. Before he killed Yao Tuahai, he survived a sudden attack from a life-death realm king. This alone was enough to make Ning Bugue look at him with new eyes. "Senior, who is that old bug?" Lin soon changed the topic. This was what he was most concerned about. "He is a king of the water barbarian branch of the voodoo barbarian tribe. His name is Shui Qianshan. He became famous more than 1,000 years ago and is also an extremely powerful guy." Speaking of this, Ning Bugue couldn't help but frown. This old guy is cautious and cunning. He is greedy for life and afraid of death. Why did he suddenly come to the Empire? Little guy, do you know why? The water barbarian branch, Lin Sun was shocked and thought of a possibility. When he was in the bloodthirsty camp, he had killed many strong water barbarians and obtained the Amrita Saint Pearl by chance. This treasure was said to be the sacred treasure of the water barbarian branch and had incredible magical effects. Lin soon escaped from the ancient relics in the Soul Oblivion Sea with the help of this treasure. But now, this Amrita Saint Pearl had long been destroyed by the gate to heaven and turned into the purest power and integrated into Lin Sun's body. Could it be that Shui Qianshan came for this treasure? Lin Sun was a little uncertain. A life-death realm king crossed the border and sneaked into the empire regardless of the risk. Moreover, he clearly wanted to take Lin Sun away. Was all this as simple as the Amrita Saint Pearl? I don't understand. Lin Sun finally shook his head. Ning Bugue didn't ask any more questions. He immediately stood up and said, "Well, I should go. Little guy, if you have time, you can come to the camp of the Blood Army in the western border of the Empire. I will take you to the battlefield and drink with the enemy's head." "Senior, thank you for this time." Lin Sun hurriedly stood up and bowed seriously. This time, Ning Bugue helped him a lot. If it wasn't for Ning Bugue, the consequences would be unimaginable. Work hard on your cultivation. The world is destined to belong to you young people." Ning Bugue waved his hand and floated away. Lin Sun couldn't help but feel a touch of warmth in his heart. This time, he was quite surprised to be able to invite Blood King Ning Bugue to help him. Chapter 540. In the evening, the setting sun shone. At the east gate of the Forbidden City, a strange team came. The men were dressed in shabby animal skins, the women were dressed in coarse linen clothes, and some children were running around barefoot and buttock. There were more than 100 people in the team. The Imperial guards guarding the gate were a little dizzy. Where did these country bumpkins come from? Their clothes were too shabby. They could tell at a glance that they must have come from a remote place. "You stop. Line up and check them one by one." A guard shouted. These people were too abnormal. This was the Forbidden City, the capital of the Empire. How could any random person enter? Crack. As soon as he finished speaking, the guard was slapped hard in the face, causing him to see stars and his mind to go blank. What made him most dumbfounded was that the person who slapped him was the commander of the guards. "Your Excellency, you?" the guard asked in a trembling voice. However, he saw that the commander of the Imperial bodyguards did not pay attention to him at all. As if he was on fire, he hurriedly walked towards the strange group of people. His usually stern and arrogant face was now filled with a warm and humble smile. The guard was stunned. What's the matter with the leader? Aren't they just a group of beggars? Is it worth it to treat them like this? The leader of the guards whispered something to the leader of the group. Then, with a smile on his face, he bowed and bowed, opening the way for the villagers. He didn't even go through the usual inspection and just let them pass. Until the strange team disappeared, the commander of the guards still bowed and waved his hand enthusiastically to say goodbye. He was even more enthusiastic than seeing off his relative. The guard who had just been slapped was so shocked that his eyes almost fell out. What the hell is going on? Even when the leader took his mother into the Forbidden City, he was not so humble and enthusiastic. It was also at this time that the guard commander came back, wiping his cold sweat. When he saw the guard, he immediately kicked him again and scolded, "You bastard, you're usually so smart, how come you're blind today? Do you know that you almost killed me just now?" The guard was kicked to the ground, but he didn't care about his grievances and asked, "Boss, what's going on?" The guard leader said angrily, "What's the matter? Can't you see that it's Lin Sun? Even Marquis Lingtian was beaten by him. Is he someone you and I can provoke?" The guard was stunned for a moment before he suddenly reacted and exclaimed, He is that? He was so shocked that he stuttered and couldn't even speak properly. "Yes, that's him. I'm afraid that very few people in the Forbidden City would dare to provoke him." The guard commander sighed with emotion. The guard was dumbfounded. Why would such a character suddenly bring a bunch of country bumpkins into the city? If the boss didn't show up just now, would he have offended the young master, who was famous all over the world and was the most outstanding person in the Forbidden City? At the thought of this, the guard shuddered and was filled with lingering fear. That team was naturally the villagers of Feiyun village, who returned with Lin Sun. On the way back by Soaring Eagle battleship, Mu Wansu and other practitioners from Keystone Business, Ning family, Yi family and Gong family had left one after another. When Lin Sun and these villagers were sent back to the Forbidden City, the Soaring Eagle battleship belonging to the Iron Blood Army also returned. In order to avoid the tragedy happening to these villagers again, Lin Sun planned to place them on Heart-Cleansing Peak. Anyway, that place was big enough to provide these villagers with a pure land where they could live in peace. "Dad, the lord who guarded the gate just now seemed to be afraid of brother Lin Sun," Inglur cried. 3 years later, the little boy who had been instructed by Lin Sun to practice martial arts had grown into a young boy with dark skin and white teeth. His eyes rolled around, revealing a sense of cleverness. Ing Hao scratched his head and said vaguely, "It should be." Then he glared at Lin Sun, "Don't talk nonsense. Behave yourself. This is the Forbidden City, the capital of the Empire. It's the first time for me to come here in my whole life. Don't make trouble for brother Lin Sun." Not only did Ing Hao think so, but the other villagers also thought so. Since entering the Forbidden City and seeing the incomparably prosperous and dazzling things, they were all shocked. They couldn't believe their eyes, feeling as if they had entered the legendary Immortal Kingdom. They had lived in the depths of 3,000 mountains all their lives. They didn't even have many opportunities to enter Donglin town on the border of the Empire, let alone enter the Forbidden City. Now, Lin Sun took them directly into the Forbidden City, which made them excited and restrained. They felt that their eyes were not enough to take in everything along the way. Originally, Lin Sun planned to hire some chariots to take them to Heart-Cleansing Peak, but this proposal was rejected by Shirao Tianren, the village head. According to him, it was the first time for them to enter the capital of the empire in their lives. Naturally, they should take this opportunity to see the prosperity, brilliance and prosperity step by step. Lin Sun understood their mood, so he didn't refuse. He took them along the bustling road. However, along the way, Lin Sun frowned a little because their team was too strange. The clothes, expressions and appearance of the villagers were ridiculed by many people, which also attracted a lot of disgust and exclusion. This made the villagers' excitement fade a lot and they became silent. They were not stupid. Naturally, they could feel the contempt and exclusion along the way. "Lin Sun, did we disgrace you? If so, let's go to Heart-Cleansing Peak as soon as possible," Aunt Xiao said in a low voice with embarrassment on her face. Other villagers also looked at Lin Sun. Lin Sun smiled and said, "Aunt Xiao, don't think too much. The Forbidden City is like this. It's inevitable that there will be some people who judge people by their appearance." Then, he looked at the sky and said, "It's going to be dark soon. I'll take you to dinner first and then go home." Inglur and other children cheered at once. They had been hungry for a long time. Smiles of Beauties, the most famous restaurant in the Forbidden City, was built in the middle of the lake. It was 100 feet high, and its whole body seemed to be made of jade. In the night, it glowed brilliantly and was magnificent. When the group of villagers appeared, the row of beautiful maids standing outside the building were dumbfounded. In the past, those who went in and out of Smiles of Beauties were either rich or noble, and all of them were famous. But tonight, hundreds of villagers in shabby clothes came here, which made those beautiful maids almost think that someone deliberately came to make trouble. "Child, do you have an appointment?" a maid asked Lin Sun in a low voice patiently. She knew that Lin Sun was in charge. "Let's have dinner. Please arrange it for us," Lin Sun said with a smile. The maid was a little embarrassed. "The private rooms in the building tonight have been booked out yesterday. Child, why don't you change a place?" Lin Sun was stunned. "Booked out? Lin Sun, let's change a place. This place is like the Immortal Palace. It's uncomfortable for us to go in for dinner," a villager said with a reserved face. The other villagers were more or less dizzy. They had never been to such a place in their lives. They couldn't imagine that this was a beautiful and luxurious restaurant. This scene caused those maidservants to be unable to refrain from bursting into laughter, and it caused the villagers to feel even more reserved and embarrassed. These mountain people, who lived in the fields all day, had never seen such a scene. They all looked a little embarrassed. Lin Sun's face darkened. He glanced at those maids, which made them stop smiling, but their attitude became much colder. Although they were all trained to be well educated, it depended on the kind of guests they treated. In their eyes, Lin Sun was just a teenager, and he came with a group of villagers. At first glance, they knew that he was not a rich child from an aristocratic family. Naturally, they couldn't treat him with humility and hospitality. Lin Sun didn't want to argue with them. They were just a group of maids, and he didn't need to embarrass them. Originally, he wanted to take a group of villagers to have a good meal and see the best scenery in the Forbidden City. He didn't expect to encounter such a thing, which was really disappointing. At this time, a displeased rebuke suddenly sounded in the distance. "Why are there so many beggars? When did the Smile of Beauties become the territory of the beggar gang? Wang Hu, go and have a look. Don't let these beggars block the way." With the rebuke, a group of young men and women came from afar. They were all dressed in luxurious clothes. The men were handsome, and the women were beautiful. They were quite extraordinary. There were also a group of retainers around them. The rebuke was issued by one of them. While speaking, those retainers had rushed forward fiercely. They were going to push away the villagers in the way, and make a way for the young men and women behind them. Lin Sun was a little depressed. When he saw those guys were so rude, he immediately got angry. He flashed and appeared there. With a wave of his sleeve, a strong wind swept out. Plop, plop. With a burst of noise, those retainers who rushed up to clear the way screamed, and were severely shaken out before they could react. They fell to the ground with blood spurting from their mouths and noses, looking extremely embarrassed. This scene happened too fast and ended too fast. When the group of young men and women who followed them realized what had happened, the retainers lying on the ground were screaming again and again. "You're courting death." A child was furious. But in just a moment, he was stopped by someone next to him. "Don't be impulsive." The speaker was a tall and handsome young man. He obviously recognized Lin Sun, but he looked at Lin Sun with a trace of malice and even a trace of resentment and hatred in his eyes. "I was wondering who it was. It turns out to be you. How powerful you are. You want to attack my people without asking anything?" Lin Sun looked cold and glanced around. When he saw the faces of those young men and women clearly, he recognized some of them as acquaintances. They were Qi Yu, Princess Ling Wang and others from Zhenwu Courtyard. It was also Qi Yu who stopped the child just now. P.S. Thanks for the gift from my old brother, Ungrateful Treasure Rabbit. Also, thanks to everyone's monthly vote encouragement. As for Lian Fei and Yao Susu who didn't show up, I will mention them later. Chapter 541. Facing Lin Sun's unceremonious rebuke, Chi Yu and Princess Ling Wang all looked gloomy and gloomy. They came here to attend the banquet tonight. Unexpectedly, they met Lin Sun before they entered the Gate of Smiles of Beauties. In the past, Princess Ling Wang would have lost her temper according to her arrogant and conceited temperament. But since Lin Sun became a grandmaster of spiritual tattoos and became famous all over the world, even the royal family changed their attitude towards him. Princess Ling Wang didn't dare to act rashly again. The lad in front of them seemed to be younger than them, but his status and power were far beyond their peers. Therefore, even Chi Yu, who had been forced to kneel down by Lin Sun, could only restrain his resentment and anger at this moment. You have to look at the master before you beat a dog. But you hurt my squire regardless. Lin Sun, you've gone too far, haven't you? Chi Yu took a deep breath and said in a low voice. Lin Sun. As soon as they heard the name, the young men and women around Chi Yu and Princess Ling Wang all gasped and their faces changed slightly. They finally realized who the lad in front of them was. This was a ferocious figure that was renowned throughout the world. Not to mention them, even some great figures wouldn't be willing to rashly offend this fellow. This guy was really abnormal. In today's Forbidden City, he was recognized as a fierce figure. No one wanted to mess with such a person. You mean I've gone too far? Lin Sun frowned and glanced at Chi Yu coldly. It seems that you still think your servants didn't do anything wrong? Chi Yu's face changed slightly. Lin Sun's gaze made him feel uncomfortable. Even though he had long been a strong practitioner of Tao Insight Realm, he still felt scared when facing Lin Sun. Last time when he helped Gu Yunting to fight for the Horn of One-Legged Ox, he was forced to kneel down by Lin Sun, which had left a shadow in his heart. He braced himself and said, He who doesn't know is innocent. Who knows, they are your men. He looked at the villagers of Feiyun village, not far away, and felt quite wronged. A group of guys dressed like beggars. Who would have thought they had something to do with Lin Sun? If they had known this earlier, they would rather hide as far away as possible. Apologize. Lin Sun didn't bother to talk nonsense and said concisely. You. Chi Yu's expression flickered. He, a direct descendant of the Qi clan, had to apologize to a bunch of villagers? If news of this were to spread, how would he be able to face others in the future? Lin Sun, although the royal family doesn't intend to hold you accountable for your past mistakes, it doesn't mean that you can be lawless. Princess Spirit Phoenix couldn't take it anymore. She felt that they had already endured enough tonight, but Lin Sun still refused to let go. This made her unable to bear it any longer. Hee, you think you can represent the Empire's royal family? Lin Sun countered with a question. He had never had a good impression of this unruly and arrogant Princess Spirit Phoenix. Seeing her reprimanding him in such an arrogant and bossy manner, Lin Sun immediately became a little annoyed. Compared to Princess Jing Xian, this unruly girl was simply too unlikable. Lin Sun, what on earth do you want? Princess Spirit Phoenix's face was ashen. I said apologize. Lin Sun was expressionless. Otherwise, none of you can leave today. They were in front of the Smiling Daughter Pavilion, the busiest time of the night. There were many people coming and going in this area. The commotion here had already startled many people nearby. They all looked over and whispered to each other. So he is Lin Sun. As the rumor says, he does things without any scruples. He doesn't even put Princess Spirit Phoenix and Chi Yu in his eyes. Interesting. We didn't come here in vain tonight. There's a good show to watch. Who are those beggars? Why did Lin Sun directly shed all pretense of cordiality with Princess Spirit Phoenix for them? Hush. Shut up. What beggars? Don't drag me with you even if you want to die. If Lin Sun hears you, don't say that you know me. The beautiful maids standing in front of the Smiling Daughter Pavilion to welcome the guests were all dumbfounded like clay statues. Lin Sun. Just now, the one they refused to enter was actually the young genius with the reputation of young master of spiritual tattoos, who had caused a sensation in the Forbidden City. But why did he bring a bunch of country bumpkins? All of a sudden, those maids were in a mess. They were anxious and their faces changed, giving birth to many uneasy emotions. It was a pity that Lin Sun didn't care about this at all from beginning to end. He never had the thought of haggling with them. However, when the villagers of Feiyun village were offended by Chi Yu's squires, Lin Sun couldn't tolerate it anymore. If he didn't care about it, it would seem that Lin Sun was easy to bully. Therefore, at this moment, Lin Sun's attitude was extremely resolute. Apologize. If you don't apologize, don't even think about leaving. Even if things got out of hand, Lin Sun didn't care. Anyway, in today's Forbidden City, Lin Sun really didn't worry that anyone would dare to harm him. Are you sure you want to be so aggressive? Chi Yu's voice seemed to be squeezed out from his teeth. Under the watchful eyes of the public, he was blocked by Lin Sun and forced to apologize to the villagers, which made him feel a little embarrassed. What? Do you want to fight with me? A touch of coldness appeared in Lin Sun's black eyes. Chi Yu was about to go crazy. Lin Sun was too difficult to deal with. Neither soft nor hard, Lin Sun was as stinky and hard as a stone in a latrine pit. At the same time, he had some scruples in his heart. Last time he was defeated by Lin Sun, he had lost all his face and couldn't even raise his head in Jinwu courtyard. If he fought with Lin Sun now and was suppressed again, he would lose all his face. Lin Sun, I think we should forget about it. Shirao Tianren, the village head, came forward and said in a low voice. He didn't want Lin Sun to offend too many people because of them. The other villagers also nodded. How could they not see that Lin Sun was standing up for them? But they also saw that those young men and women were of extraordinary status. Obviously, they were all nobles from rich and powerful families. They didn't want Lin Sun to be embarrassed because of this. Lin Sun was stunned and sighed in his heart. These villagers were so simple that they would rather suffer some losses than offend others. At this time, a loud voice suddenly sounded in the distance. If you've done something wrong, just apologize. There's no need to lose face. The person who dared to speak at this time was obviously not an ordinary person. Therefore, when the voice sounded, it immediately attracted a lot of attention. It was a thin middle-aged man in a gray robe. His face was as sharp as a knife, and he looked resolute. His seemingly inconspicuous body seemed to hide a volcano, giving people a sense of awe-inspiring spirit that would erupt at any time. Zhao Jiuxiao, the Lord of Sea. Many people present were shocked. It turned out that the legendary lord was here. But what they didn't expect was that his words just now were obviously not on Princess Spirit Phoenix's side. This was too shocking. Granduncle, I won't apologize. You didn't see how much this guy bullied people. Princess Spirit Phoenix said angrily, feeling a little wronged. Zhao Jiuxiao was stunned and obviously felt helpless. Finally, he sighed and looked at Lin Sun, saying, My young friend Lin Sun, how about I apologize on your behalf? Whoosh. The whole audience was shocked. Zhao Jiuxiao. It was incredible that the Lord of Sea of the Empire would apologize to Lin Sun, a junior, in order to resolve this dispute. Since you asked, I will obey. But I hope this kind of thing won't happen again in the future, Lin Sun said seriously. He could only give up. Since Zhao Jiuxiao was here, how could he continue to chase after him? Zhao Jiuxiao nodded, of course. Since the matter has been solved, I will leave first. Lin Sun didn't want to stay any longer. It was getting late. He had to find a place to let the villagers fill their stomach. He had cultivated, so he didn't need to eat. But most of the villagers were ordinary people who couldn't bear hunger at all. Wait, Zhao Jiuxiao said, you brought so many people here. Why are you leaving before entering Smiles of Beauties? Before Lin Sun could explain, an old man who looked like a butler hurried over and whispered something in Zhao Jiuxiao's ear. After a moment, Zhao Jiuxiao suddenly understood and said to the old butler indifferently, "You deal with this matter. Remember to give me an answer." Then, he stepped forward and said to Lin Sun with a smile, "I already know what happened just now. Let's go. I will arrange a place for you to meet." Lin Sun shook his head. "Forget it. It's the same wherever we go." A bitter smile appeared on Zhao Jiuxiao's lip. He lowered his voice and said, "Little fellow, this Smiling Daughter Pavilion is this old man's territory. If the world finds out that you brought a friend to a gathering but were turned away, where would this old man hide his face?" Lin Sun was stunned. He didn't expect that the behind-the-scenes boss of Smiles of Beauties was Zhao Jiuxiao, Lord of Sea. Immediately, he realized that no wonder this place was so famous that no one dared to make trouble here until now. It turned out that Lord of Sea was behind it. "Then I'll do as you say." Lin Sun nodded and agreed readily. "Ha ha, let's go. Last time I sold everything I had and finally got more than 1,000,000 gold coins to buy a place for refining weapons. I'd like to take this opportunity to have a chat with you." Zhao Jiuxiao laughed. Immediately, he led Lin Sun and the villagers into Smiles of Beauties. Witnessing all this, all the people nearby sighed with emotion. If it were someone else, how could Zhao Jiuxiao treat Lin Sun so politely? Princess Spirit Phoenix and Qi Yu looked gloomy, but they had no choice but to swallow their anger in the end. They really had no ability to argue with Lin Sun unless they fell out with each other. But this was definitely a way to kill 1,000 enemies and lose 800 men at the cost of 800. When they all entered the Smiling Daughter's pavilion, the old steward who had spoken with Zhao Jiuxiao, the Sea Conqueror King, strolled to the door and calmly glanced at the dozen or so beautiful waitresses who welcomed the guests. He said without any emotion in his voice, "You saw what happened just now. I need a satisfactory answer." The waitresses turned pale and realized that they had made a big mistake this time. Chapter 542. In the Hall of Heaven Han, Smiles of Beauties. The splendid and magnificent hall was brightly lit, and there were no empty seats. Hundreds of villagers of Feiyun village were sitting in it. The tables in front of them were full of fruits, delicacies, wine and delicacies. Beautiful waitresses were shuttling among them, pouring tea and wine with considerate service. These villagers, who had lived in barren mountains and rivers in the past, had never seen such a scene. At the beginning, they were a little uneasy and cautious. However, after drinking 2 or 3 cups of hot wine, they immediately relaxed and ate the meat and drank the wine in big mouthfuls. They couldn't be bothered to pay attention to any rules or etiquette. On the other hand, those little brats were all running around and playing, having a great time. Even so, those maids didn't dare to show a trace of strange emotion. They had been warned and knew what happened outside Smiles of Beauties, so they didn't dare to be negligent. Lin Sun was talking with the village head Shirao Tianren. They talked about the things that happened in the past 3 years and sighed from time to time. Later, the village head was drunk and his eyes were blurred. He sighed with emotion. "I've lived for most of my life, but I never thought that I would have a chance to enter the Forbidden City in this life. It's really exciting." Lin Sun smiled. In his heart, these villagers were like his own family. This time, Lin Sun was relieved and happy to bring them all to the Forbidden City and settle them on Heart-Cleansing Peak. Before long, Zhao Jiuxiao, Lord of the Sea, came. Lin Sun quickly got up to greet him and invited him to sit down. After the greeting, Lin Sun asked, "When are you going to refine the armor with spiritual tattoos?" Zhao Jiuxiao sighed with deep exhaustion on his face. "I'm not in a hurry for the time being. My nephew has left in advance for the ancient Desolation realm to seek Taoism." Lin Sun was stunned. He also knew that Zhao Jiuxiao was single all his life, and he loved his nephew Zhao Ziyun the most. The place that Zhao Jiuxiao bought at the press conference of Keystone Business a while ago was prepared for Zhao Ziyun. Speaking of Zhao Ziyun was also a top figure. In Zhenwu Courtyard, he was one of the best. Compared to Zhao Ziyun, Qi Yu was clearly a level inferior. Alas, the most helpless thing is that up to now, I haven't even gathered all the spiritual materials to refine the armor with spiritual tattoos. How can I refine it? Zhao Jiuxiao smiled bitterly. Now, I can only ask you to refine the armor with spiritual tattoos after I'm ready. Lin Sun was also deeply touched by this. Why were armors with spiritual tattoos so rare? Firstly, it was too difficult and abstruse to refine it. Secondly, it was because the required spiritual materials were too rare and precious. Not to mention ordinary people, even some great powers would find it difficult to gather all of them. For example, Zhao Jiuxiao, the sea-calming king of the empire, was such a glorious and dazzling figure. But even he had not collected all the spiritual materials needed to refine a suit of armor with spiritual tattoos. It was conceivable that such a peerless treasure as the armor with spiritual tattoos could not be refined by anyone who wanted to. After talking for a while, Zhao Jiuxiao suddenly said, "Lin Sun, when are you going to the ancient desolation territory?" Lin Sun was stunned. The question was so abrupt that he was a little surprised. Then he shook his head and said, "I haven't thought about it yet." Zhao Jiuxiao also seemed to be a little surprised. He looked at Lin Sun and said, "In the future, in this world, the fragility of the Great Tao will gradually become more and more serious, which is bound to affect the cultivation of practitioners. According to the speculation of the old priest on the observatory, this change will begin in no more than 10 years. This change is also called the catastrophe of the Great Tao." The catastrophe of the Great Tao. Lin Sun was shocked. A while ago, he was refining the 9-dragon cauldron on the 9th floor of the spiritual cultivation tower, so he didn't know that the catastrophe of Tao had already caused numerous disturbances in the Forbidden City and made a lot of noise. Later, it was the royal family of the empire that blocked the news. But even so, there were still many waves brewing in the dark. Now, many big forces were preparing for this. They were going to send their core disciples to the ancient desolation territory to leave this world where the catastrophe of the Great Tao was about to break out. Gu Yunting of the Green Deer School, Shai Yutong of the Xie family, Shi Xuan of the Keystone Business, and a group of the most elite disciples of the Zhenwu courtyard had already gone to the ancient desolation territory. According to the news, the catastrophe of the Great Tao 10 years later is just the beginning. No one knows how long this process will last. But it is certain that when the catastrophe of the Great Tao begins, the ancient desolation territory will block and abandon all the passages. Zhao Jiuxiao revealed a secret. This means that it is obviously impossible to go to the ancient desolation territory 10 years later. Zhao Jiuxiao was a big shot in the royal family of the empire. His words couldn't be false, which made Lin Sun feel quite uneasy. The catastrophe of the Great Tao. What kind of disaster was this on Earth? It could be inferred that this disaster was obviously aimed at cultivators. It would affect and hinder their cultivation and cut off their way to seek the Great Tao. Under such circumstances, going to the ancient desolation territory had become the most important issue for many practitioners. Unfortunately, not everyone could enter the ancient desolation territory. Zhao Jiuxiao then explained the reason. If one wanted to enter the ancient desolation territory, there must be someone to guide them. Otherwise, there was no way to find the way. And those who could serve as the guide were all ancient orthodoxies that were like overlords in the ancient desolation territory. Only such ancient orthodoxies could open the passage to the Xiao Empire and arrange the void coordinates with supreme means to guide people. Under such circumstances, it was not hard to imagine how difficult it was to enter the ancient desolation territory. After all, in Xiao Empire, there were only a few people who could ask the ancient orthodoxies in the ancient desolation territory to guide them. At present, only a small group of powerful forces, such as the royal family of the empire, the Green Deer School, the Imperial Observatory, the Imperial Army, and the 7 top aristocratic families, could be confirmed. Of course, it could not be ruled out that other forces could do this, but there were too few of them. Knowing this, Lin Sun couldn't help but be moved. The Great Tao disaster, which would kick off in 10 years, had caused so many disturbances and variables, which was totally beyond Lin Sun's expectation. Just keep it to yourself. Don't spread it out so as not to cause some unnecessary disturbances and influences, Zhao Jiuxiao said and got up to leave. Lin Sun sat there alone, drinking by himself. The Great Tao disaster. Could it be avoided only by going to the ancient desolation territory? Should he also prepare for it? Lin Sun suddenly thought that he could ask Zhao Jingxian about it. She came back from the ancient desolation territory and should know more about it. That night, Lin Sun returned to Heart-Cleansing Peak with the villagers of Feiyun village. Accompanied by Lin Zhong, Lin Sun personally arranged a place for them to live in the future. Considering that most of these villagers were ordinary people, Lin Sun specially told them that bullying and suppressing the villagers of Feiyun village on Heart-Cleansing Peak was strictly prohibited. Otherwise, if Lin Sun knew it, he would be severely punished. It was late at night when Lin Sun arranged all this. I have an idea. In the future, you can select some young people with good qualifications from these villagers and cultivate them carefully. In the future, you can also form a force that belongs to you. It may not be obvious now, but as long as you grow up step by step, you can check and balance the clansmen of Northlight Lin. Even if you leave in the future, you can make them not dare to act recklessly. Vulture hadn't fallen asleep yet. He helped Lin Sun analyze the things on Heart-Cleansing Peak. Today's Heart-Cleansing Peak was thriving faster than before. In particular, Northlight Lin had all moved back to Heart-Cleansing Peak, which undoubtedly improved the power of Heart-Cleansing Peak a lot. However, although the current situation was thriving, there was a problem that seemed very subtle. Because now there was only one direct descendant of Heart-Cleansing Peak, Lin Sun. If Lin Sun stayed in Xiao Empire for the rest of his life, it would not be a problem. With the passage of time, Lin Sun would eventually marry a wife and have children to carry on the family line. At that time, the direct descendant of Lin family would also quickly flourish and become strong. But this was doomed to be impossible. Lin Sun rose too fast. Now he was only 16 years old, but he had already become famous all over the world. Few people in the Forbidden City could match him. For Lin Sun, if he wanted to become stronger, he could only leave Xiao Empire and find a broader stage. Otherwise, if he stayed here, it was destined that it would be difficult for him to exert his potential. His cultivation would be limited to this world for the rest of his life. It didn't matter if Lin Sun left for a short time. But if he left for a long time, some problems would inevitably arise on Heart-Cleansing Peak. At that time, clansmen of Northlight Lin would not be willing to let Vulture, Young Ku and Lin Zhong take charge of Heart-Cleansing Peak. This was a very normal thing. After all, when a group of dragons had no leader, the most easy thing to breed was to compete for power. This was the simplest analysis. If the three collateral forces of Westbrook, Floating Cloud and Flying Peak were unified 2 years later, the situation on Heart-Cleansing Peak would be more complicated. What Vulture said at this moment was a reminder to Lin Sun to cultivate a force of his own. In the future, he could rely on this force to contain and balance those collateral forces when he left. Knowing all this, Lin Sun had to admire Vulture's foresight and wisdom. Finally, he nodded and agreed with Vulture's suggestion. After learning the news of the catastrophe of Tao, Lin Sun had to seriously consider when to choose to go to ancient desolation territory. It was not only to avoid the influence of the catastrophe of Tao. More importantly, heaven-reaching Sword Sect and Yunqi Bai were also in ancient desolation territory. Yunqi Bai was the culprit who caused the bloody incident in Heart-Cleansing Peak. If Lin Sun wanted to avenge his parents and relatives, he must go to ancient desolation territory. Chapter 543. Zhu Laosan was back. Early the next morning, when Lin Sun woke up from meditation, he was shocked by the news. He walked out of Heart-Cleansing Hall and found that Zhu Laosan was back. However, unlike in the past, Zhu Laosan seemed to have been reborn. His posture was still majestic like a mountain, but his appearance was obviously much younger. His rock-like skin was full of indescribable strength and beauty. Just by standing there casually, he gave off a feeling that he was connected to the heavens and the earth, a disdainful aura that could suppress the universe. His cold eyes looked around, and he seemed to be able to steal souls away. There was no doubt that he finally broke the barrier and entered the reincarnation developing realm after several months of practice in the Tower of Wheel development in the depths of the palace. Originally, Zhu Laosan only had a few years of life left, but with this breakthrough, his life was also extended. He would not be troubled by birth, old age, illness and death for at least 500 years. Lin Sun was very pleased that Zhu Laosan's return undoubtedly made Heart-Cleansing Peak one more heavyweight great practitioner. Thank you very much. Zhu Laosan cupped his hands and bowed to Lin Sun with a serious and solemn attitude. Without Lin Sun's recommendation and help, he would never be able to enter the Tower of Wheel development in the depths of the palace to practice. For him, this breakthrough meant not only more powerful but also more powerful. More importantly, he no longer had to worry about his lifespan. It was like he had been reborn. This was a life-saving grace. It's good that you're back. Lin Sun smiled brightly. On the same day, he held a clan meeting for the first time in Heart-Cleansing Hall as the patriarch of Lin family. Lin Baiguang, the ancestor of Northlight Lin, Lin Huayuan, the leader of Northlight Lin, and some big shots of Northlight Lin participated in the meeting. In addition, there were also Lin Zhong, Vulture, Yang Ku, Zhu Laosan, Ci Shui, Yang Ling, Old Diao and others. Even Shurao Tianren of Feiyun Village was invited to join. The atmosphere of the hall was solemn. Lin Sun sat on the main seat. Although he looked young, after years of tempering and baptism, he had imperceptibly gained a sense of calmness and power. A young spiritual tattooist, a teacher of Green Deer School, a special spiritual tattooist of the Commune of Spiritual Tattooists, and the Academy of Spiritual Implements of the Empire. These identities and halos undoubtedly made Lin Sun more extraordinary and transcendent. At least, in today's Forbidden City, no one dared to underestimate Lin Sun's existence, whether it was his peers or the big shots who could summon wind and rain. At this time, all eyes were focused on Lin Sun, and no one dared to show a trace of neglect and relaxation. Today, Lin Sun was undoubtedly qualified to take charge of Lin family and take charge of the entire Heart-Cleansing Peak. At this meeting, Lin Sun issued some appointments in a concise and comprehensive manner. He specially hired Vulture as the first guest elder to coordinate all the affairs of Heart-Cleansing Peak. She was specially appointed as the deacon of Heart-Cleansing Peak, who was directly under the command of Lin. Zhu Laosan and Lin Zhong were appointed as guardians of the clan and served Lin Sun directly. This, with Ling Sun, Lin and Ling Lin and Peak Lin La Lin, a sect Aaa Lin and Lin. This was what Lin Sun and Vulture discussed last night. With the rise of Heart-Cleansing Peak, it was time to promulgate new rules and systems. Even Shurao Tianren was appointed as a deacon by Lin Sun, who was responsible for the affairs of villagers in Feiyun Village. Your fourth grandpa. After the meeting, old ancestor Baiguang came to Lin Sun alone and said with a complicated expression, although he made mistakes, don't hate his clansmen too much. After all, they are also descendants of our Lin family. Lin Feifeng, the fourth grandpa of Lin Sun, was the relative who bound Lin Sun with the four symbols coiling dragon pillar and wanted to kill him. Fifth grandpa, don't worry. I won't do too much. However, the mistakes they made in those years must be accounted for. Otherwise, it will be difficult to convince the public. Lin Sun nodded. That's good. That's good. Old ancestor Baiguang sighed and turned away. He seemed to be a little lonely and depressed because of Lin Feifeng's death. but Lin Sun couldn't do anything about it. He was almost killed by his fourth grandpa. On the same day, Lin Sun left Heart Cleansing Peak with Shiraoji and returned to Green Deer School. Things on Heart Cleansing Peak had been arranged properly. Zhu Laosan, Lin Zhong, Vulture, Old Ancestor Baiguang and Lin Huiyuan were in charge. There was no need to worry about any accidents. 2 years later, the 3 collateral forces of Westbrook, Floating Cloud and Flying Peak would be unified. The whole Lin family was destined to undergo a new transformation again. Moreover, Lin Sun also left the Shattering Sorrow in Heart Cleansing Peak for Lin Zhong alone. This was a peerless weapon that could change a force. He believed that Lin Zhong could play a great role as long as he made good use of it in the future. Lin Sun's goal in returning to Green Deer School was very clear. He wanted to go to the Mountain of Sky Ladder to further comprehend the power of water essence and prepare for breaking through to Tao Insight Realm. However, the plan couldn't keep up with the changes. On the day Lin Sun returned to Green Deer School, Zhao Jingxian came to visit him. "What's wrong? Is there something wrong with the 9 Dragons Cauldron?" Lin Sun was surprised. Today, Zhao Jingxian was still dressed as a man. She was dressed in purple, with bright eyes and white teeth. Her bearing was clear and free, and she had a kind of transcendent charm. She smiled, revealing her pearly white teeth. Her voice was as clear as spring water. "That's not it. I'm here to express my gratitude in person. The wonders of this treasure have completely exceeded my expectations. With it, I have the confidence to fight against an expert at the early stage of the reincarnation development realm." "Amazing!" Lin Sun praised sincerely. He had long heard from Zhao Tailai that Zhao Jingxuan's cultivation realm had been suppressed by the current Great Emperor for a full 10 years because her foundation and talent were too strong and terrifying. Her current cultivation was still at the initial stage of the Grotto Heaven realm. But even so, she admitted that with the 9 Dragons Cauldron, she could fight against the strong in reincarnation developing realm. This was undoubtedly too shocking. Zhao Jingxian blinked her eyes and said with a smile, "You are not bad. I remember that when I was in the fulfillment of Sea Spirit Realm, I was far less powerful than you. At least I couldn't resist the sudden attack of a Life-Death Realm King." Obviously, Zhao Jingxian also knew the details of the battle that happened in Yao family. Lin Sun was speechless. That was just a fluke. There won't be a second time. "By the way, I have something to ask you." "Tell me about it," Zhao Jingxian said with interest. "It's about the catastrophe of the Great Way." Lin Sun didn't hide and asked the question in his heart. "I'm very curious. How much impact will this catastrophe have on the world?" "This catastrophe is beyond imagination. It involves the changes of Heaven's secret. Even some immortals in the ancient Desolation territory can't speculate the danger." Zhao Jingxuan's expression became serious, but it is certain that the emergence of this catastrophe will cause a shocking change in the pattern of the whole world. "The whole world? Including the ancient Desolation territory?" Lin Sun was shocked. "Yes. But for the ancient Desolation territory, it won't be affected too much for a long time. Perhaps the world we are in now will be affected the most." Zhao Jingxian didn't hide it. According to the speculation of some seniors, this catastrophe is full of variables, and it is hard to predict whether it will be a blessing or a curse. Speaking of this, a strange look appeared in her clear eyes. Nowadays, there is a prophecy in the ancient Desolation territory. It is said that when the catastrophe of the Great Way appears, it is a sign that this era will present an unprecedented great era. At that time, tens of thousands of talents will rise together, and the stars will shine brightly. It is destined that there will be countless geniuses, and mysterious orthodoxies from ancient times will appear in the world. All Tao will coexist and compete for the world. This is also called the Great World War. In the end, there was a trace of yearning and longing in her voice. Obviously, when the Great World War was mentioned, Zhao Jingxian couldn't calm down. Lin Sun was shocked, and so was he. He didn't expect that the emergence of the catastrophe of the Great Way would have such a great impact. This was really a sign of changing the world. The strange expression in Zhao Jingxuan's clear eyes was suddenly restrained, and a wisp of a dazed expression appeared on her face. She said, "But it's also a sign that this is bound to be an unprecedentedly chaotic world. An unexpected calamity will descend, and countless cultivators will die with hatred. At that time, it'll definitely be a chaotic battle that's filled with the smoke of war and misery." Lin Sun was stunned. Great world? Troubled world? Was it destined to be accompanied by disasters and destruction under the Great Way that was prosperous and glorious to the extreme? And the source of all this came from the catastrophe of the Great Way. It was like an invisible force that was going to open an unpredictable Great World War or a chaotic world war. Of course, there is still a long time before all this begins. At least in the next 100 years, there is no need to worry about such things happening in the ancient Desolation territory. Zhao Jingxian said casually, however, it can be foreseen that all the orthodoxies in the ancient Desolation territory are preparing for this and accumulating the most sufficient strength. They want to seize their own fortune in this earth-shaking upheaval. There are only 100 years left to prepare. Lin Sun thought for a while, but he was relieved in the depths of his heart. All this news was so sudden that he felt a little unprepared. Fortunately, at least there was still time to prepare. However, it could be predicted that with the arrival of the catastrophe of the Great Way, the whole world was destined to become more and more chaotic. Lin Sun, there is another important thing that I need your help with this time. Suddenly, Zhao Jingxian said the real purpose of her visit. What's the matter? Lin Sun asked. 3 days later, an elder from the orthodoxy that I belong to will come to this world with some descendants. They plan to explore an ancient secret place in the Soul Oblivion Sea. It's filled with many restrictions set up by ancient powerful beings. I want you to go with us. It might be an opportunity for you. Zhao Jingxian invited. And as far as I know, there is a high possibility of refining Tao Sea Soul Flower in the ancient secret realm. Chapter 544. Whoosh. 3 days later, in the blue sky, a treasure ship flashed like the wind and lightning, crushing the snow-white clouds and sailing towards the Soul Oblivion Sea in the east of the Empire at an extremely fast speed. It was like a palace within the treasured vessel, and it was divided into different rooms. In one of the rooms, Lin Sun sat cross-legged in front of a desk, listening to some young men and women chatting absent-mindedly. 3 days ago, when Lin Sun heard that the soul flower of the Sea of Refinement was very likely to exist in the ancient secret realm in the depths of the Soul Oblivion Sea, he agreed to Zhao Jingxuan's invitation without hesitation. Because if he could get this peerless spiritual medicine, he could easily get rid of the Devil's Calamity powder on Vulture. As for the opportunity mentioned by Zhao Jingxian, Lin Sun didn't care much about it. At present, he did not lack cultivation methods, nor did he lack suitable treasures. What he lacked might be a trial to break through to the Tao Insight realm. It was worth mentioning that Lin Sun acted as a retainer for the time being at the suggestion of Zhao Jingxian. And he had a new identity, Lin Xian. I didn't expect that there would be an ancient secret realm in this dilapidated and incomplete small world. A man in yellow next to him sighed with emotion. But no matter what, the human world is too barren. It can't be compared with our ancient desolation realm. We can't even find a decent sect here. You can imagine how bad the human world is. Someone looked arrogant, as if he was talking about the country. That's true. If it weren't for looking for the ancient relic this time, I wouldn't want to come to such a damn place in my life. You can't say that. As far as I know, there are still many powerful forces in the lower world, but they are too few. Those men and women spoke one after another, full of a sense of superiority, like a group of nobles patrolling a remote area, full of pride and conceit. This made Lin Sun feel ridiculous. These men and women were not the disciples of Zhao Jingxuan's sect, but the retainers of those disciples. They were just a group of squires. How could they shamelessly regard the world where Xiao Empire was located as a barren and declining land? It was ridiculous for them to be so arrogant and condescending. Lin Sun didn't bother to refute them. He just sat there and drank by himself. His current identity was one of Zhao Jingxuan's retainers, which was why he was arranged to stay here with the retainers of the other sect disciples. As for those disciples from other sects, Lin Sun only glanced at them from a distance since he boarded the treasure ship. He didn't have any contact with them. However, Lin Sun had heard from Zhao Jingxian that there were about 6 or 7 disciples, both men and women, who belonged to an ancient orthodoxy called Holy Land of Spirit Treasure in the ancient Desolation territory. The Holy Land of Spirit Treasures. This reminded Lin Sun of the Holy Land of Heavens pivot mentioned by the Dean of Green Deer School. Obviously, these two ancient orthodoxies should be giants of the same level. This time, the leader of the team was an elder of the Lingbao sacred ground who had perfected the reincarnation developing realm. He was Gao Yang. I heard that the ancient secret realm we're going to explore this time was left behind by an ancient demon saint, and it's covered in layer upon layer of restrictions and is extremely dangerous. But there are numerous unparalleled fortuitous encounters within it as well. For example, immortal herbs, precious treasures, treasures from the ancient times. Everything that one should expect is there, and it's even extremely likely that the inheritance and mantle of that demon saint exists within it. Suddenly, a retainer spoke mysteriously, which attracted Lin Sun's attention. Lin Sun had heard from Zhao Jingxian that the ancient secret place they were going to explore this time existed in a mysterious area of the Soul Oblivion Sea. It was like a small world inside, where there were many unimaginable opportunities. At the same time, it was also full of dangers and was densely covered with many terrible restrictions. Without sufficient preparation, even a life-death realm king was doomed to die, let alone an ordinary practitioner. Of course, the numinous treasure Holy Land had come prepared this time. According to Zhao Jingxian, Elder Gao Yang possessed an incomplete map of the primordial era secret realm. Moreover, Elder Gao Yang had brought along a precious treasure that could resolve numerous dangers and bring them safely into the secret realm. However, going in was one thing, and whether or not he could obtain a fortuitous encounter was another matter. After all, it was a terrible ancient secret place. It was said that it was the place where an ancient demon saint died. How could it be so easy to get the opportunities left by such a person? Demon saint. Those who are conferred the title of demon saint have passed the 9 longevity tribulation and set foot on the top of the road of divine Tao. They have the power to control the stars and travel around the world. Someone said in surprise. If this secret place is really left by a demon saint, it is absolutely a great opportunity that is hard to find since ancient times. Even in the ancient wasteland territory, it rarely appears. How could there be such a great opportunity in such a desolate and barren world? It's incredible. Others also sighed with emotion. Hey, isn't it a good thing for our holy land of spirit treasure? I heard that in order to seize this incomparably rare opportunity, the sect asked Elder Gao Yang to bring along a sect guarding treasure. Let's go in. As long as we perform well, this opportunity will be ours. Hearing this, many retinue's eyes became eager and yearning. Lin Sun laughed in his heart. If such opportunities were so easy to get, they would have been found by those old monsters in Xiao Empire. How could you guys have a chance? Indeed, Lin Sun didn't believe that such terrifying existences as the Dean of Green Deer School, the Queen of Dark Night, the old priest of the Star Observatory, and the current emperor didn't know there was such an ancient secret place in the depths of the Soul Oblivion Sea. Since this secret place still existed, it proved that there must be great mysteries in it, and not everyone could get their hands on it. Brother Lin Xian, why don't you speak? Suddenly, the yellow-clothed man next to Lin Sun opened his mouth and looked at him. I want to know what you think about this ancient secret place. But before Lin Sun opened his mouth, someone sneered. Liao Jun, he is just a little practitioner in the mortal world. I'm afraid he has never heard of the ancient secret place before. But you asked him what he thought about it. Isn't it a joke? Ha ha ha. The others also laughed, their expressions full of ridicule, full of ridicule. All of them knew Lin Sun's identity. Even though he was a retainer by Miss Jing Xian's side, he cultivated in the lower realms. This caused them to unconsciously have a feeling of superiority, as if they were superior, and they thought highly of themselves. They took Lin Sun to be a native of the lower realms, and didn't take him seriously at all. Even in conversation, almost no one was willing to take the initiative to talk to Lin Sun. So at this moment, when they heard Liao Jun asking Lin Sun, they couldn't help but laugh, feeling like playing the lute to a cow. Lin Sun looked calm, playing with the wine glass in his hand. But in his heart, he was thinking that even the retinue was so arrogant. What about their master? I've heard that there is a young man named Lin Sun in the mortal world. Now he is famous all over the world. At the age of 16, he has become a grandmaster of spiritual tattoos and successfully refined a suit of spiritual tattoos. Even in our ancient desolation territory, he can be regarded as a peerless talent. Suddenly, someone said in a low voice. As soon as this remark came out, it immediately caused an uproar. A young grandmaster of spiritual tattoos? You must be bragging. How could there be such a dazzling figure in a barren place like the mortal world? Don't be so sure. Miss Jing Xian also came from the mortal world, didn't she? If this is true, Lin Sun is too extraordinary. Such a figure will enter our ancient desolation territory to cultivate sooner or later. Maybe we can take this opportunity to get to know him. Everyone was discussing and doubting this. At this time, a blue-robed young man suddenly raised his chin and looked at Lin Sun, saying, Hey Lin Xian, your surname is also Lin. Do you know Lin Sun? Is he as powerful as the rumor says? All of a sudden, everyone looked at Lin Sun. Lin Sun said casually, I haven't met him, so I don't know. You are Jing Xian's retinue, but you don't even know whether Lin Sun is powerful or not. I'm afraid most of the rumors about Lin Sun are exaggerated. It's not worth mentioning. The blue-robed young man sneered. It makes sense. It's just the mortal world, a barren place. How could there be such a genius? Immediately, they stopped talking about this topic. They had just come to this world and didn't know anything about it. Subconsciously, they believed that such a barren place could not have such a genius. Hearing all this, Lin Sun didn't know whether these guys were arrogant and conceited or shallow and ignorant. He became more and more disinclined to pay attention to these guys. Originally, Lin Sun was full of expectations for these people from the ancient desolation territory. He thought that since they came from the same orthodoxy as Zhao Jingxian, they must be extraordinary. Unfortunately, Lin Sun was sick of these people just by contacting these retainers. What kind of people were they? They were just retainers, but words like mortal world, aborigines, and barren world came out of their mouths. They were high and mighty, full of superiority, conceited and arrogant. Did they really think they were important? However, Lin Sun didn't bother to pay attention to these things. On the contrary, those retainers looked down on him more and more, and their words became more and more unscrupulous. Lin Xian, since you can become Jing Xian's retinue, you must be a powerful figure. After all, ordinary people are not qualified to be chosen by Jing Xian. Why don't we take this opportunity to learn from each other? Let me see your martial arts level in the mortal world. Suddenly, the blue-robed young man spoke again and pointed his spear at Lin Sun, which immediately aroused the interest of many people in the field. That's a good proposal. Lin Xian, why don't you accompany Huang Shi to learn from each other? Haha, I think it's better not to bully a practitioner from the mortal world. If it is spread back to the ancient desolation territory, we will be ridiculed for bullying a practitioner from the mortal world. It's just for fun. Don't take it seriously. Those retainers egged Lin Sun on one after another. Forget it. We are about to arrive at the Soul Oblivion Sea. Let's get down to business. Lin Sun sat there calmly and refused casually. It was not a fight but a provocation. They just wanted to make Lin Sun a fool. What? It's just for fun. Don't you give me face? The blue-robed young man called Huang Shi snorted coldly. He stood up and glanced at Lin Sun coldly. Come on. Don't be so wishy-washy. Don't spoil our fun.